Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a Town of Superior Board of Trustees meeting and the Superior Metropolitan District No. 1 Board of Directors meeting for November 26, 2012. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Leah Gregores.
Here.
Trustee Joe Cirelli.
Here.
Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Finnegan.
Here.
Lisa Skumatz.
Here.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Bagley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
And Clerk Paul Sergeant here.
Great, thanks. That brings number 3, swearing in of a new trustee. And welcome back to a new trustee. Phyllis?
If you will just raise his right hand. And then, do you want to read the oath?
Sure, I'll read the oath. I, Leah Gregores, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Colorado and faithfully perform the duties of the office of trustee upon which I am about to enter. Great.
And welcome back. And would you like to take a picture with your family?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me sign this
We got
first.
time.
Okay.
So we need somebody to be able to take the picture.
Sandy, do you want to take the picture?
I think Matt should.
You got it?
Not the entire thing.
Well, the family that's here.
With the town of Superior in the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move
Oh,
on.
my God. I'm going to do a walk.
You walk downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
1, 2.
All right, great. All right, well, thanks a lot. Let's start with reports, questions, and issues. And anybody want to start?
I'll start since I'm standing.
Okay. Trustee Gregores, you're up.
Well, first of all, I just want to, given it's the time of the season of Thanksgiving, I'm really thankful to be re-elected with Trustee Cirelli and Trustee Williams and have an opportunity to serve 4 more years at the Town of Superior. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not to bring this up, but staying true to my word, a couple of years ago when I was appointed as Mayor Pro Tem, I said I would do it for 1 2-year term. My 2 years are up, and I'd like to have somebody else have the opportunity to serve as Mayor Pro Tem. And given that Trustee Williams got the most votes, that would be my personal recommendation. And everyone will have the time to do, obviously we'll have to put that to a vote, right?
Yeah.
Some time later on to this evening.
Yeah, well, we can do that during, that's the one thing that the board will, during the committee assignments.
Okay. All right, anything else? Trustee Pennington?
Just wanted to announce, Historical Commission is going to decorate the Mine House in an old-fashioned Christmas theme for their December 1st opening. They're open the first Saturday of the month. All are invited. We've already met. I'll just confirm that the town intends to have a final comment on the Enwell Wind Farm expansion. That final comment's due November 30th,
Right.
and we'll review that this week. I attended the advisory committee open house, and I have to say, Matt probably has the precise count, but I thought it was very nice. We got, I think, 5 serious candidates for our advisory committees there. We had more than that attend, and I didn't talk to everybody, so you probably have a more full report on that. And then I would, I think the agendas are put out over the CAC prior to a meeting. I'd like to reiterate that I think they should be e-blasted out as well. There was some chatter this morning on the CAC that people were not aware of some of the agenda items tonight, so I'd like to make a habit of just e-blasting that out every Thursday. That's all.
Trustee Williams?
Well,
I'm going to, I think I've announced this the last time, the Kudos Corner that I'm doing every time our town board meetings during my reports, which is just giving kudos out to residents, a specific resident every time, that go above and beyond for our town. And today I'm calling out Kevin Cologne, and he was, I say, a longtime resident of Superior. He just recently moved to south of Denver, somewhere in the Littleton area, for a completely new endeavor in his life with his family. And I just kind of wanted to give thanks and tribute to him. He was the pastor of Cool River Church for probably a decade at least. That was the church that was occupied El Dorado, K through 8 on Sundays. And he did countless hours of volunteer service that he brought in organizations from Texas, and I think he even brought some people from Vietnam one time over the last 10 years. Some of the projects they did were trails, open space, fencing maintenance, just a number of different projects to help our town. And so I think actually I was going to mention one thing. The last project that he was working on was with a group that was working on the community center awareness, and that was something that he had kind of on his docket for a long time, and that just didn't develop for him until, well, who knows when it will, but I know that it was near and dear to him, and he was working with those residents, so I think he just passed that on to the next people that are interested in working with that community center residents. Anyway, so I just wanted to thank him, and hate to see him leave Superior, but he has to do other things. And then I wanted to announce my first Friday's Donuts with Deb is December 7th. That's my first one, 7 to 9 a.m. at Juju's Bakery and Cafe. They are opening soon here, right by Safeway in Superior. And it's, as I say, first Fridays. It's the first Friday of the month, every month, and from 7 to 9 a.m. That's December 7th, and then, of course, January 4th, February 1st, and so on. And I'll post it on the CAC, and I'll post it on my Facebook, and I'll mention it every 2 weeks here. And I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving with their family and friends. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. I don't have anything to announce, and I also hope that everybody had a nice Thanksgiving. It's beautiful weather. Great to live in Superior. Great to live in Colorado. So, thanks, Trustee Scott's.
Great. The committee open house was really good, and even the RCAC got a few serious folks, even those who filled out the form while they were sitting there. So, feeling good about that. Had a coffee buzz, and one of the items that came up was a running club, and Superior Running Club's regular members regular participants have gone from 5 to 15, thanks to the new contest we're having. Very happy about that. And I went to a Consortium of Cities Water Stewardship meeting where we discussed drought outreach and coordination and messaging and that sort of thing, and it's a continuing series of meetings, and I think that the outcome will come up in about 6 months or a little less, so I'll keep you posted on what they say.
Great, thanks. Trustee Cirelli.
The only thing I have to report on is I sat in for Trustee Williams at the last Open Space Advisory Committee meeting on November 14th. They have a lot of new members, and the Open Space Committee was one of the committees that had a lot of continuity of membership, so that they have a big learning curve. And so a lot of time in their meetings is going over the learning curve, and that's a good thing because you get new ideas, but it is a reality of, our new processes. They are working on their 2013 work plan, and in particular, they're interested in the web-based trail mapping that is being done in the county, and hopeful that a person from the county can come to one of their meetings, demonstrate what they're doing. It was a good meeting, and that's about it.
Great. Trustee Hanson?
A few weeks ago, we had our second year of second grade field trips here in Superior. The second graders toured the museum, town hall, and Grasso Park, and I received several messages, nice thank you notes from all the second graders at both Superior and El Dorado K. And this message up here is from the second graders at El Dorado K-8, and we really, really appreciate this kind of gratitude from them. And this goes to show what kind of kids we have in this community, what kind of families at our schools. So thank you very much to all the second graders in Superior. The only other thing I have is ProStack has actually changed their meeting to this week. They canceled it from last week because of Thanksgiving. It's going to be this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. here. I unfortunately can't make it. I've got another commitment. So if somebody else can make it, then that'd be great.
I was planning on going.
Okay, and that's it.
Great, thanks. Anything from the town clerk? Town manager?
Yes. So we had another vacancy, or resignation on the Open Space Advisory Committee, so hopefully out of this open house that we had, we'll get some applicants.
Who is it?
Joanna Jasek. Just a reminder again about the Boulder County Commissioners Dinner, December 3rd at 5:30 here. Let's see. The group for the RTD BRT station canopy designs met, and everybody was unanimous in their selection except for us, who we had option 3 and everybody else had option 2. So that's what I think the corridor's going with. So,
That's fine.
yeah.
That was one I picked. Yeah.
So we have stuff out there. Are they replacing that? Is that what the plan is?
It's my understanding, yes.
With all of them?
Yeah.
The whole,
To be, so it'll be one standard for the whole.
Why don't they spend money on new service instead of replacing look good stuff?
How
I don't
about
understand
how
that.
about call and ride service for Superior instead of that?
yeah.
That's crazy.
I had included some information, the city manager in Louisville had sent me an email about a joint services study using an intern from the graduate school. Cost impact is $8,700. Any interest in, there's an opportunity we can also do it in 2014 if we wanted to wait and budget it or discuss it during the budget process. But before I give an answer, I want to make sure that it's something that the board wants to take a look at. So,
This is a joint effort?
yes.
Can you give us a little more information on the intern has the intern been selected?
No, we have to go through that process with the Department of Local Affairs and the graduate school,
Of what's university?
Colorado.
Would they be an urban affairs student, or what would their
I'm
specialty
not
be?
exactly sure which department. I think it's the Graduate School of Public Affairs. But, and we would have to work with Louisville on deciding what services we would want them to look at as well. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done by the end of December, which is why I'm thinking maybe 2014, we can talk about it over the next year and then go through the budget process and decide if that makes sense. And we would have an idea of what services we'd be looking at. And things of that nature.
Sounds logical to me.
Okay. And I think that was it.
Great, thanks. Town attorney? All right, that brings us to item number 6, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. Andrew, do we haven't done, yes.
Whoa.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
I'll go back. So any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
I'd like to
See,
pull
I scratched out, and I should have scratched out.
8C,
Okay.
just for some questions.
8C to follow. Any other changes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to, with that change by trustee Schooner, second by trustee Gregoris. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. That brings us to public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items.
bought us 4404 South 3rd Avenue. The packet had a list of the representatives in the committees. Thank you for putting that in there for us residents that don't work those positions. The flood, the stormwater, and the comp plan. I have comments to make. Will I be able to make comments at the time that they come up? I'll be back.
Okay. Additional public comments?
I have a question. Will there be opportunity for public comment? Sorry.
If it's about the comprehensive plan, yes, there would be opportunity for public comment. Okay. I figured. Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none. Presentations? We don't have any this evening. That brings to item number 8, consent agenda. And on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the November 13th, 2012 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting, preliminary reading of an ordinance amending Section 10-5-80 of the Superior Municipal Code to allow temporary camping on private property, and adoption of a resolution for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 to certify delinquent water and sewer accounts to the county treasurer for collections. I'll entertain a motion. By Trustee Skumatz, is there a second? Trustee Williams, discussion?
I was not here on the 13th, so as far as the
Okay.
minutes are concerned.
All right. I don't think that we're spending any money as far as I can tell, so all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. That brings us to what was C, adoption of a resolution approving a second amendment to the Home Consortium Intergovernmental Agreement. Trustee Williams.
Okay. Trying to navigate through this mess here. All right, so I'm wondering, so does this process to apply for some of these benefits, such as the short-term rental assistance, the weather and energy efficiency upgrades, the housing counseling services, federal Section 8 vouchers, does it make this process easier or more difficult, and do they apply in the same way as before, or is it different?
It's applied in the same way it has been in the past. It doesn't make it easier or more difficult for residents to, doesn't affect that.
Doesn't affect that. So they're given the same benefits that they had before with this change?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm good.
Any other questions? Public comment regarding this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior Resolution R-77, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior, Colorado, approving the Home Consortium Intergovernmental Agreement.
Motion by Trustee Williams, second by Trustee Gross. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. That brings us to item number 9, discussion regarding the residential green building ordinance. Mr. Magley?
We are 35 minutes ahead of schedule, so...
Okay, sorry, I'll start to speak slower.
We'll make up for it.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just... So, the last time the board discussed this agenda item was on October 22nd, and at that time the board indicated that they would like to see 3 options, at least 3 options to consider as far as amending the residential green building code, as far as the home energy rating system. And once the overhead pulls up, I'll put those 3 options up on the board to take a look at. But basically, what was proposed to the board was 3 different sliding scale options. Those can thanks. Sorry. There we go. So these are the 3 options that were proposed by staff, and then the Recycling Conservation Advisory Committee also came up with a 4th option for the board to consider at their last meeting when they reviewed this. But basically, what you see here is you have the current HERS rating system of the surrounding municipalities and the county. So
Mr. Manley, could you do me just a half, could you back up and just say what this is about in case anybody have to tune in and was wondering what on earth this is
Sorry, we've had so many meetings on it that...
And which way is more aggressive and less aggressive in
Sure.
your scores and all that?
Sure, yeah. So the town currently has a residential green building program where homes have to meet a certain energy efficient level for their home construction, and this applies to new construction or construction with significant remodels. And Ernie Kern's here with our building department. He can also provide input. But so the current score for reference for everybody at home is here in black. And so homes up to 3,000 square feet have to meet an energy rating system of score of 70. And as you move down the scale from 70 to 0, the home becomes more energy efficient. And so, and during the construction, there's different things you can do to make your home more energy efficient, whether it's windows, appliances, insulation, solar panels, all these types of things, a furnaceless heating system for your water. All these are types of things that you can do to make your home more energy efficient. As you include these things in your new construction, your home would be rated on a lower score. So our current score up to 3,000 again is a HERS score 70. Once you get to 3,001 square feet, you have to meet a HERS score of 50. And then once you get to 5,001 square feet, it drops to a HERS score of 25, I believe. And that's where it levels out. So we are looking at possibly adjusting the rating score that's required of new construction in homes, and the board asked for 3 options to consider. And so that's where we're at. For comparisons, the city of Louisville, the city of Lafayette, and the city and county of Broomfield require a HERS score of 70 for any new construction, no matter what the size. The Boulder County is more aggressive in their requirements for energy efficient homes. They start at a HERS score of 60, and then as a sliding scale, as the home grows larger, the more energy efficient it has to get until it gets to 6,000 square feet, where it has to be
A vault.
at 0. Yeah.
It's a vault, isn't it, at that
Well,
point?
it's offset by
Yeah.
solar panels, wind, those type of technologies. And then the city of Boulder, which is on this line here, starts at 60 as well, and then it drops to 35 for anything over 5,000 square feet. The 3 options that were presented for board consideration, it's a little difficult to see, but option 1 would have starting at a HERS score of 70. Once you get to 3,001 square feet of home size, it's a sliding scale, or following the lines here. Actually, it's not a sliding scale. It goes to 60 at 4,500 square feet and then levels out at 55. Option 2 starts at a HERS score of 70. At 3,001 square feet, it's a sliding scale down to a HERS score of...
You're on option 2?
Yes, at 50 here. So here's the sliding scale here. Sorry, I'm getting confused by the lines. So it starts at 70, levels out at 50, option 2. And then option 3 starts at 70, and levels out at a HERS score of 35. And then the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee suggested that the HERS score start at 60, and then have a sliding scale leveling out at 30, HERS score of 35 at, looks like 5,500 square feet.
Trustee Williams?
I really like that integrated chart there, in the fact that it shows option 1, 2, and 3, and where Boulder lies, where we currently lie, where Boulder County, Louisville, Lafayette. Do I have that in the packet?
Yes.
I have this particular one.
I couldn't find
I couldn't find it.
It's in your package shown in 2 slides.
Right.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I would also mention that I think Rachel Bray from her
Yeah,
campus
she's supposed to be here.
She was supposed to be here, so
Yeah, I guess
we're ahead of schedule, so she may come in and detail.
Is Beth here?
Because that's very helpful. I'm kind of going back and forth in the packet here.
It's actually attached to the RCAC
Right.
list recommendation, if you keep going down further.
But that doesn't have an option 1, 2, and 3 on it.
It doesn't.
Well, it's the
No.
same. Okay, let's stick those graphs.
81.
Just having it all integrated together, it just helps me.
It's the options 1, 2, and 3 are on slide or page 75 in the packet.
I'll start out voicing an opinion if nobody else wants to go.
Sure. Sorry, any questions about any of this, and then we'll have also take public comment, but sure.
I'm
Fine away.
Yeah, I'm in favor of option 1 or 2. I think sort of midway between where Louisville, Lafayette, and Broomfield are and Boulder is. I don't see a reason to have to be more rigorous in our efficiency standards in Louisville, Lafayette, and Broomfield. And the public may know this from the various other times. Every time, the more efficient you get, the more expensive your cost of construction gets as well. So I do believe we want to keep this community cost affordable relative to our neighboring communities. So for what it's worth, I'm somewhere between option 1 and 2.
Trustee Gregorus?
Oh, Chris, go ahead if you're...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and Sandy, I would have to agree with you. What are the chances there is going to be a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot home built? Not that many. So, yeah, I'm in agreement. You and I actually agree on this. We had our disagreements in the past.
Trustee Hansen and Trustee Williams?
Matt, did you say how you guys came up with your conclusion? Why did you choose the option that you chose?
For me, I was looking at, when we are looking at new residential construction, which this is made only for new residential, we're looking at who we compete with or who our competition in the market is, and it's with the city of Louisville, Lafayette, and Broomfield.
And then what about the Planning Commission? I know they've seen this. Have they seen all the scores of the different options, including the RCAC option?
They have not seen these most recent ones, no. They have recommended approval of the original recommendation, and I'd have to go back and look to see what that was. but-
Okay.
But that would be less, I'm sorry, is that less rigorous than the Superior existing?
Ernie, do you remember?
Their recommendation was less rigorous because it was too expensive to build
Right.
at
That's
a
correct.
low rating of 25. So they're asking to go up a bit.
Right.
Yeah, theirs was probably closest to option 3. I think we started at 2,500 going down, but then we ended about 35 on our score, so approximately the green line, or a little bit under it. So, yeah. In most cases, less rigorous than the existing, but still going down to the final of hers of 35. I'm earning credit of the building.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Other questions or comments? Trustee Williams?
So I just wanted to clarify that the actual square feet includes basements, whether they're finished or not.
That's correct, right. A usable basement, you take out parts that couldn't be used as finished, but anything that could be finished in the future is
Okay.
included.
So that would not include a garage?
No, not a garage.
Okay.
Trustee Hansen?
Yeah, as far as costs go, didn't we hear at the last meeting that the cost increase happened when you get to 50 hertz or lower? And that's mainly because that's when you have to start putting in solar paneling. So the cost difference from 60 to 70 is insignificant or something else?
Yeah, if I could hand out a sheet tonight.
Sure.
We started with these, we had a substantially built, which is a design consultant, did a presentation of Boulder. That's what some of these, they had costs on their stuff. Boulder Creek Builders was the builder who built the townhomes here in Calmonte. They supplied a little information. And Populous, who was the last group that came and talked to you about the HERS scores, they also had construction information. So getting down to a score of 55 is like 2% of the total construction cost. So anything to that is really pretty insignificant. Most builders on their own now, well, they have to get to 70. If you notice the sustainably built, the top of the page, their score started at 100, because that was before anybody had adopted it. It was in 2008, before anybody adopted stricter requirements than the code at that time. Now the code, the 2012 code, has a starting HERS score of 70 approximately. But even starting at 100 and going down to 60 or lower is only about 2% to 3% of the total construction cost. This is based on $150 a square foot. And Populous was, when they came here, they were really talking about $200 a square foot. So the cost actually as a percentage would actually probably be lower than anything that we have here. The percentage increase in cost to get down to those HERS scores. So the Populous was saying to get to 55 is less than 2%, and they really agreed with both of the other two sources on this chart. So.
Other questions from the board? Trustee Skumatz?
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Sure.
So I guess I feel compelled to note a couple of things about the RCAC recommendation, which I think will be noted in a moment, because I see that Ms. Bray showed up, but I think it's important to follow up on what you said, that there is little to no additional cost to reduce to on the order of 50, 55, 60, somewhere in that range. And that's construction cost and orientation, all those sorts of things are a dramatic role, and there's zero cost. That can have a huge role, and that's not discussed in here at all, and I think that that's a really important thing that's omitted. But what we're doing is saving a little bit of construction cost, and we're then condemning the inhabitants of the house for 100 years to have much higher energy bills, and I think our residents deserve better than that, and I think that's a really important element. I think Louisville, Lafayette, and Broomfield are at 70 right now, but I don't know what we know about what their plans are over the next year or two in terms of adopting plans. I can't believe that Louisville doesn't have this on their agenda at some point over the next couple of years. They've been green on so many other elements. I think that's a temporary condition of them being at 70. I don't believe that's a long-term thing at all. I don't think that they're going to be our competition at 70. I think that good and responsible builders are building to more efficient standards, and we should encourage good and responsible builders in our town by having them have to perform to certain standards.
Okay. Any public comment regarding this issue?
Rachel Bray. I live at 2355 Andrew Drive. I am the chair of the RCAT committee. Basically, I'm here, though, to speak for myself. I have volunteered for over 50 hours for Habitat for Humanity on a house in Evergreen that meets her score, will meet her score of 57. I think there were handouts regarding that. I don't know. And it lists all the things that it takes, and it's nothing special. I just visited the house on Saturday. It's halfway through construction. The envelope is done. No installation yet. The wall framing is in, but it's all open. And so all it really is 2x6 exterior walls, additional insulation, ceiling. A lot of, the doors are really nicely weather tight. Every single opening, every single crack is sealed, and it's just the way you do it. And they don't do anything special. Habitat for Humanity is mainly volunteers and donations. So they got a 57, nothing special. It's oriented south, but it doesn't have a whole bunch of windows. It has adequate windows. Just, it looks like a normal home. Also, there's, I believe, I know the town of Superior got this information. Ryland Homes is a home builder, and they send a letter to the town of Superior, and they say, our homes receive industry-leading HERS scores in the 50s with the potential 40s with available options. And then they list some options on another page, which actually didn't really show much information, but I mean, there you go. That's a standard home builder. They're not known to be green, but that's what we're looking at nowadays. You can do 50s easily. Nothing special. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment regarding this issue?
Hi, I'm Andrew Huden. I live at 2175 Andrew Drive. My wife works at National Renewable Energy Labs in their residential buildings division, so this kind of thing is regular dinner table discussion for us. I'd like to echo some of the comments of the trustee. I think we do need to look to the future on this. We talked about wanting to lower costs for new construction, but we need to look at 15, 20, 25 years down the road. Do we want to be an attractive community of used homes for people to buy? In other words, do we want to have houses that are going to be more expensive than in neighboring communities to heat and provide energy for? So I think we need to look into the long term rather than just a new construction and new unit term for this. Comment?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Board comments or questions? Trustee Skumas?
I guess I take to heart what Ms. Bray said, and I guess I wouldn't want houses in our community to be worse than Habitat for Humanity homes. That would be an embarrassment to me. And so
Shouldn't be, they build good ones.
they build good homes, but so should we. We should require that for our residents as well. And I think I hear reticence on some of the numbers that are lower than, that are in the 35, 40 range and all that. But these are for homes that are 5,000, 6,000 square feet and larger. And I think that we shouldn't be promoting energy hogs of big homes. They shouldn't, just because you can afford it doesn't mean that you should afford the energy use. It has an impact not just on one resident, but we have to build more power plants and other things in order to support those homes. I don't think that's right to put that on other houses and I think on other residents, and I think it's 100 years of condemning our residents to higher bills, and that doesn't seem appropriate to me.
Additional board comments? Trustee Pennington?
I respect all the comments I've heard here, but I also wanted to note that the homes that make up most of Rock Creek, we were told have a HERS of about 150. So to be going down to option 1 or 2 at between a 50 and a 60 is a huge improvement over time. And also, what we do here tonight isn't where we will end up for the next 20, 30 years. We will be reviewing this periodically and potentially can get more aggressive on it as the rest of the market around us also gets more aggressive on it. So I didn't want to sort of view this as where we will sit for 20 years. We will change with the times down the road as well. So my point is to keep us somewhat competitive at this current point in time.
Additional board comments? Trustee Hansen?
Yeah, just compared to homes that were built 15 to 20 years ago here in Rock Creek, the technology has changed quite a bit, and to make it easier to build more efficient homes. But had I had the option back then, or it was presented to me, to build a much more efficient home, I would have opted to do that, realizing that over the next 15 years I'd be saving. As far as competing with the other communities, I don't think that's a big jump to go from 70 to 60 as a starting point. And if we are in a competition, then I want to be ahead of the competition. I want to be building better homes that are going to be looked at as more efficient and higher quality homes overall in the county. So I would like to see us, I would adopt the RCAC resolution or suggestions. We brought in the members to RCAC. They put a lot of time into it. We have a lot of respect for those people, and I would think that we should take their consideration. We are actually reducing the standard from what we are now. So I think it's warranted to go to that, I would call it a middle ground.
My comments, I think I echo Trustee Skumatz, Trustee Hansen here, and I think I said this last go-around. Once again, these houses are going to be built for 100 years or 150 years, and I think that we owe it to the people that are going to be living here to be energy conscious. And I understand Trustee Pennington's point of view, but I don't think we're going to be building any significant houses in 20 years. I think the timeline is really kind of 5 to 10 years, and so if you really want to have an impact on what's happening in Superior, I think you really need to do that now. So I would strongly recommend the RCAC recommendation. Trustee Skumatz?
If I wasn't clear, the RCAC recommendation is my preference as well.
So it sounds like the board is somewhat split between option 2 and 3.
I would support the RCAC recommendation as well.
Which is option 4, not 3.
And I feel most comfortable with staff's recommendation. I'm assuming that's in blue. Yeah. That's, I think, a very good compromise.
Okay. Unless there's any additional board questions or comments or anything from the public, I think we just need to put this to bed and would entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz?
I'd like to make a motion that we, is there a thing here?
No, it's a motion.
Oh, this is just a direction for it to come back. Yeah.
I'd like to move that we adopt the RCAC recommendation for the HERS scores.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? Trustee Cirelli, further discussion? All in favor? Hansen, Cirelli, Skumatz, Muckle, opposed, Williams, Gregoris, and Pennington. That carries. So this will come back at beginning of the year or?
December.
December, okay. I'd like to thank everybody who has participated in this, and I really thank RCAC for all the hard work and going into this, so appreciate it, and also from staff. That brings us to item number 10, Town Board Representative and Community Assignments. We had a brief conversation earlier in the evening with some changes in committee assignments, and I think, Mr. Megley, you have that list?
Yes, Mayor. So this is after each town board of trustees election, after which in the past occurred in April, but was a vote to move it to November. So with our recent election and re-election of the 3 trustees, we typically go through and the board assigns various board members to different representatives on other entities like Denver Regional Council of Governments or our own internal town committees. And so this is the process. Tonight, I'll just go through the list and make sure I get my notes. So the first committee, Denver Regional Council of Governments, Representative Deborah Williams, alternate Sandy Pennington. The next one was Boulder County Consortium of Cities, with representative as Lisa Skumatz, and alternate was Chris Hansen. The Louisville Superior Interchange Committee, Those members are Elia Gregoris, Joe Sorelli, and myself. The Louisville Superior Library Board, Representative Sandy Pennington, alternate Deborah Williams. The Boulder County Resource Conservation Advisory Board is staffed by Beth Moisky with no alternate. The Metro Mayor's Caucus, Representative is Andrew Muckle, alternate Lisa Skumatz. The Mayor's Commissioners Coalition, Representative Andrew Muckle, alternate Elia Gregoris. Urban Drainage is attended by staff. The US 36 Commuting Solutions is open to all board members. Transit Alliance is attended by staff. The Transportation and Safety Committee is Elia Gregoris, Deborah Williams, and Sandy Pennington. And then the Finance Committee was Joe Sorelli, Lisa Skumatz, and Chris Hansen, and that's been changed to a committee of the whole board.
Did you skip the Stewardship Council, or did you?
I did. Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, sorry. Representative Joe Sorelli, alternate Chris Hansen.
So is the board comfortable with that, or did they have any questions or concerns? Trustee Williams?
So, couple things. I'm going to throw in my hat for the Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to get to that one.
Okay. All right. Then we'll get to what we already have on here. If Sandy Pennington would like to be the first representative for DRCOG, I could be the alternate.
Deborah, I say leave it as is, actually, if you're willing to stay as the primary.
So you'll stay as the alternate? Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, where are we now?
Okay. If there's no other comments on that, then the board liaisons for advisory committees. The Open Space Advisory Committee board liaison was Deborah Williams and will change to Sandy Pennington. The Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee board liaison will stay Chris Hansen. The Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee will stay board liaison Lisa Skumatz. The Historical Commission board liaison was Sandy Pennington and will change to Joe Sorelli. Those were what I had for board liaisons.
And board's comfortable with that? Okay.
And then the last item, which per the code, the board, after the election, will vote on Mayor Pro Tem.
So I heard from Trustee Williams that she's interested. I think Trustee Gregoris mentioned that he's happy to give that up. Are there others who want to participate? Trustee Skumatz?
I wanted to nominate Trustee Sorelli for the position.
Okay.
So do we talk about her?
Yep. We'll talk amongst ourselves.
Okay.
So Trustee Skumatz.
So to continue, I think that Trustee Sorelli has conducted himself professionally and respectfully. The number one responsibility is to act for the mayor in the mayor's absence. That is the only written job for that job description. He has conducted himself without fail in a professional, respectful manner in all situations with all members of elected officials and professional staff, both within the community as well as outside with all the other communities that we need to deal with. I've heard no complaints from other elected officials from other places on his performance. He has productive relationships with all the board, as far as I've been able to tell. He brings credibility with his past, including the Planning Commission, and he's been on the board for quite a long time. I think he's been a bridge when the board has been divided, and I think that's a very useful skill for the next few years, although it's not necessarily part of the job description. He's been very appropriate, I think maybe perhaps because of his legal background, about involving and recusing and all that sort of stuff when it's appropriate, and I think that that's been a good leadership. His nature seems to be to work cooperatively, both within the board and outside with other communities, and I think that he's well respected on the committees that he serves on. He, let's see, I'd love to see it if he could be released from the commitments or that have been asked of him to vote, to allow him to vote for himself at this point in time. But I think one of the things, can't see how anybody would not respect the job that he's done over the last X years, which is quite a few number of years. And I have the deepest respect for Joe. I know that people wanted him to serve 2 years ago as Mayor Pro Tem, but that didn't happen. And I'd like to see him service that position at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I mean every word of it.
Trustee Gregorus?
Just for the viewing audience, I think the position of Mayor Pro Tem is indeed to step into the mayor's shoes. In the 2 years that I've served, I only had that opportunity twice. You only missed 2 meetings in 2 years, so it's not a huge responsibility, but you're always here, Mayor, and I appreciate that. On the other hand, I would like to say that whatever vote we choose tonight is in no way disrespect to Joe or to Deborah. So I think you both would make fine Mayor Pro Tems, and I just want to make sure that that's clear.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Trustee Cirilli?
I'm honored by Trustee Skumat's comments, and we certainly love to be Mayor Pro Tem, except that I believe Deb would also be a great Mayor Pro Tem, so I'm not opposed to her being Mayor Pro Tem.
Great. Well, I guess my comments are, I believe I haven't missed too many meetings, and I'd be happy for anybody to be the Mayor Pro Tem, so I think everybody would do a fine job, so. Trustee Gregorus?
I don't know what the official process is, but can I nominate someone?
It would take a vote of the board.
Okay, so I would like to nominate Deborah Williams as the next Mayor Pro Tem of the Town of Superior.
Okay. Motion, second. Trustee Pennington? Further discussion? All in favor?
Well,
We already had a motion.
yeah, so I'm sorry, but the process is...
I'm happy to do it. I hear 2 people's names, so,
Yeah.
right, so I guess I would
And did I
vote for
hear
the
you
person I
say,
do.
did someone say that the candidate can't vote for yourself?
I'm not aware of that.
He's been asked to promise to somebody else.
Okay.
And I would like to be able to vote for who he wants to, including himself.
Okay.
You can vote for yourself, I would think, right?
So did I hear there's 2 nominations out here?
That's what I understand.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
This is awkward.
So, right, so there's a motion and a
There's a
second.
motion, right.
So, all in favor?
Of which,
Well, I
Trustee
nominated
Williams.
Trustee Williams.
Right.
Yep.
That's the motion.
And you can vote for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for that information.
There you go. So, all in favor? Trustee Pennington, Trustee Gregorus, Trustee Williams? Opposed, and this isn't really opposed, that's a little strong, but Buckles, Skumatz, Cirilli, and Hanson. I'll entertain another motion. Trustee Skumatz?
I'd like to nominate Trustee Cirilli.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz, is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Hanson, discussion? All in favor? Are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, well then we have a tie, so
We can flip a coin.
flip a coin. Trustee Skumatz?
Do you feel like you need to abstain through every vote?
Like I said, I think I'm honored by the comments made and the support given me. I think it's significant that Trustee Williams got the most votes in the last election, as Trustee Gregorus mentioned. So I would like to see...
Are you withdrawing?
I'd like to make one comment about that, in that it's not about the number of votes from the residents, it's about the ability to work cooperatively, I think, as the mayor does with other jurisdictions in a positive way, and that's always been the case with you.
And I feel like Trustee Williams has earned the right to be mayor pro tem, so.
And I feel that I have a lot of support from the community, and I've always been a very strong advocate for our community, internally and externally to our region, and I'm just going to continue doing that whether I'm mayor pro tem or not.
Okay. Thoughts?
I think Trustee Shirley needs to vote for somebody to break the deadlock, because we could be here all night.
Okay.
Or we can suspend this for another time. I mean,
That's
I'm
fine as
happy
well.
to serve for 2 more weeks. If I mean, but we can reevaluate.
No, we'll go in tonight.
Okay. Trustee Skumats.
Then I'd like to move again that Trustee Cirilli be Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion by Trustee Skumats. Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Hanson, discussion, all in favor? Hanson, Cirilli, Skumats, Muckle, opposed. Williams, Gregoris, Pennington. So that motion carries. Thank you, and thank you to Trustee Williams as well. So once again, I think anybody on the board could do a fantastic job, and I will do my utmost in continuing to not miss meetings, so.
Just real quickly,
Yes.
I know that Joe is struggling, he struggled with that right now because just of his character, the person that he is. And I think that Joe is going to make a tremendous mayor pro tem, and I have the most respect for him, so.
Okay.
Thank you. I have the most respect for Trustee Williams.
And likewise, right back at you.
All right. Let's see, I think that we've finished this topic then.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to item number 11, final reading and adoption of an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior, repealing Chapter 18, Article 6 of the Superior Municipal Code and adopting a new Chapter 15 of the Superior Municipal Code relating to flood regulations. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second reading of the ordinance, and Alex has prepared a presentation for the board. I don't know how to complete it, Alex.
Alex Arno, Public Works Director. We're going to talk about the Town of Superior's flood regulations. Okay, why are we doing this? The National Flood Insurance Program was adopted by Congress in 1968 and is operated under the jurisdiction of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And the flood insurance program is designed to provide an alternative to federal disaster assistance for property damage caused by floods. Flood insurance is generally not available to the private sector. For a community to participate in the program, it must adopt regulations managing floodplains within its jurisdiction. The standards are intended to prevent loss of life and property as well as economic and social hardships that result from flooding. In return for adopting these regulations, FEMA will offer flood insurance to properties within the jurisdictions. The town has been involved in this program for a number of years, going back to studies that were done in 1979 based on mapping that was done by the Soil Conservation Service, as it was known back then in 1976. And our regulations are part of the municipal code in Chapter 18, Article 6. So we're re-adopting and updating those regulations tonight. And the reason why is FEMA has recently completed a flood insurance study for all of Boulder County. Very little change in the town of Superior, but since they adopted maps covering the whole county that are going to be effective December 18th, they've asked us to revise our regulations as of that date, before that date. Also, the state of Colorado recently, in December of 2011, adopted a model ordinance for the state, and we're supposed to comply with the state's ordinance. So we're adopting that today. The proposed flood regulations are based on model ordinance. In terms of what's changed, not a whole lot has changed from what we have today. On the floodplain maps, they do now show the 500-year flood, although there's no regulation for the 500-year. It is shown on the maps. The main change that has occurred is in terms of critical care facilities that are defined in the ordinance. These are essential services, hazardous materials facilities, at-risk populations like daycare centers, assisted living, nursing homes. Those are at-risk populations, and so they have a higher standard if they're to be built today. Will not apply for those facilities that are currently in the floodplain. But for example, in the town center, if those facilities wanted to develop there, they'd have to abide by these new regulations. And the protection there is a little bit higher. They need to be either located outside the 100-year floodplain or elevated to 2 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. I'll show you some diagrams which show what is currently. So this is a floodplain within the Coal Creek area, east and west of McCaslin. The yellow hatched area is the 500-year floodplain. The red area is the 100-year floodplain. And if you can see the blue line, that's the floodway. So there's kind of two or three different areas or zones. The floodway has more restricted provisions. Outside the floodway in the 100-year floodplain are areas of ponding where you have slower velocities, so you can have less stringent regulations for building there. And then the yellow area is the 500-year floodplain. One thing that's good that you can see, it doesn't go across McCaslin, which means McCaslin Bridge carries both the 100-year and the 500-year flood. However, you can see here the turnpike, US 36, water flows across because it's shown here as going across. I will note that CDOT is planning to replace the existing structures on US 36 with 3 box culverts there that'll provide more flood capacity, and the next iteration of these maps will take that into account once those are in place. Also, you can see here the 2nd Avenue Bridge is also inundated. So it's kind of, and most of the areas, most of the properties that are in the 100-year floodplain are in the original Superior. Another thing that is provided in the flood insurance maps are flood elevations, and these lines represent the 10-year, 50-year, 100-year, and 500-year events. You can see this is the McCaslin Bridge, and we're going actually east to west, so Old Turnpike is right here, McCaslin, and then 2nd Avenue Bridge. You can see here the structure of McCaslin is above the 100 and 500-year flood events, while 2nd Avenue is not shown, so it's inundated, and so is the Turnpike. Also, what's given are peak discharges for various storm events. I show you these just to give you kind of the magnitude of what these flood events are. A normal flow in Coal Creek through the McCaslin area is about 70 cubic feet per second. So you can compare that with a 10-year storm, that's 1,400, and then a 100-year storm, 1% chance is 3,770. So you can see that's a lot more water than you can see that's normally flowing in the creek today. You can see other flow discharges at various points along the whole. This is the Rock Creek flood hazard area, and you can see here very few, if any, there's no properties along Rock Creek that are in the 100-year floodplain. And obviously that's because we had this information when we developed Rock Creek, so we knew where the floodplain was, and we kept out of the floodplain for various uses. You can see here, though, this is the 500-year event, and the fire station is pretty close to, it's within the 500-year event. I'll give you a little floodplain 101. This is kind of a bad thing. I took it out of the flood insurance study. But this dotted line here, if you look at a normal channel, here's a normal channel of a creek, and then when the 100-year storm event comes, it overflows the banks and flows into various areas. This particular dotted line, it represents the 100-year floodplain elevation, okay? And these areas, these dotted areas are slow-moving waters, so this is areas where it's ponding, when the white areas is where it's moving fairly fast and where it needs to be regulated, and it's called the floodway, whereas these other areas are the flood fringe areas, they're ponding areas. So where can you build? Well, if you wanted to build here, you could do that, and hypothetically, if this whole area was built in and this whole area was built in, the creek, the 100-year flood elevation would rise because you'd have restrictions because you're building in those flood fringe areas. So all the water would be pushed to the center, and you'd have a higher flood way elevation. So when we allow building here, you have to do two things. You have to build 1 foot above the base flood elevation. Okay, so you can build there, but you got to be higher than the floodplain elevation by 1 foot. And then you can't cause more than a 6-inch rise in the base flood elevation. So you can build there, and that's what we have to take into account if we build in the town center. Now, when you build in the floodway, in this area here, well, you can build there again, you got to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation, but you can't have any rise in the floodway and the base flood elevation. So more heavily restrictions in the floodway area versus the flood fringe areas. And if you remember what we called about the essential services, the critical facilities, they would have to build so that you wouldn't have more than a foot rise in elevation, so more restricted for those critical care facilities. So that's pretty much the extent of the presentation. Again, the regulations are very similar to what we're doing now. I've just pointed out the critical care facilities are the only things that are really changing. Wanted to give you an update of what we're doing with floodplain management. We've had several recent studies. We had a Coal Creek master plan that was updated in 2006, and then we also updated it for upstream of McCaslin in 2010. And what we've done there is developed a number of different flood management alternatives, mitigation, ranging from one would buy all the properties in the floodplain. It's kind of, a very stringent one, a very costly one, to doing things like widening the 2nd Avenue Bridge to allow it to pass the 100-year storm, or replacing the 2nd Avenue Bridge, or doing flood channel mitigation, more channelization of the floodway. So those alternatives we're going to be taking out to the public in this coming year. We're going to go out to the public and showing these alternatives and asking for their input, and then coming back to you to have you decide on how you want to manage the floodplain in the future. And as you know, in the budget, if you remember, we budgeted $600,000 over, I think, the next 3 years, which will be matched by $600,000 from urban drainage. So we have $1.2 million to do some flood mitigation. Primarily, we're going to look at the 2nd Avenue Bridge, replacing that or opening the opening for that, making a wider opening. So that'll be coming forward to you in the next 6 months or so. Anyway, that's my presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions before public comment.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board? By the way,
I do have one.
oh,
I think Gladys is going to come up, but she had a comment about manufactured housing. We had a conversation, and we pointed out, I think her question is whether manufactured housing outside of a mobile home park would be covered by this ordinance, and yes, it would. There are provisions for that particular instance. And manufactured housing is also available, flood insurance is available for that type of housing.
Okay.
And the number of properties, I believe there are 9 properties right now that are enrolled in the flood insurance program.
Thank you. Trustee Skamats?
And this is just a technical question that you said during the presentation, but I didn't quite get it. On the left side with the dotted lines and the hash marks and all that sort of stuff, it said it couldn't be it had to be 1 foot above BFE and not cause more than a 6-inch rise in the BFE, and I'm still confused with how it causes that rise in the BFE, and I apologize for missing.
Because you're building it here,
So you're squishing it or something?
You're
or
building it
what?
here and you're moving the water away.
The weight? Okay.
By building that, the whole flood elevation changes and it goes up a little bit.
Oh, because the foundation is the whole foundation, not pillars. I was thinking pillars, and I couldn't see why. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions from the board? Just one question, and it's maybe just tangential, but part of the mitigation, are they looking in drainage way detention to the west of Superior so it wouldn't affect the town so much, or is that not allowable since it's an older county?
That's an option, a very expensive option. They looked at a regional detention facility to the west of original Superior, and that was a very expensive option.
Okay, so we'll hear more about that. Okay, thank you. Comments from the public?
Gladys, 4404 South 3rd Avenue. Yes, Alex and I did have a little chat on the phone, and I am satisfied. I'm sure you find that hard to believe, but I am. But I can't say that the 2nd Avenue bridge work can't be done soon enough. I know it's hard for all of you to see that we have no water going down the creek. Let me tell you, I've spent time at 2nd Avenue Bridge, lots and lots of water. That picture is from many, many years ago on 3rd Avenue. And 2nd Avenue Bridge cannot be repaired fast enough when it comes to flood. It needs its kinks taken out so it'll flow straight.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Board comments or questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance Number 0-5, Series 2012, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior repealing Chapter 18, Article 6 of the Superior Municipal Code, and adopting a new Chapter 15 of the Superior Municipal Code relating to flood regulations.
Motion by Trustee Gregorius, is there a second? Trustee Williams, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 12, final reading and adoption of an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior amending Article 26 of Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code and Article 3 of Chapter 11 of the Superior Municipal Code, all relating to stormwater quality. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe Alex had just a couple updates for the board from questions from the first reading, and then any additional questions that the board might have, we can answer for you.
Alex Arnell, Public Works Director, and I'm pitching for Dimitri, who couldn't make it tonight. What we're doing tonight is that we're updating our stormwater system regulations. The town holds a municipal separate stormwater sewer, which is also known as MS4 permit from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. This permit requires Superior to develop, implement, and enforce a stormwater management program resulting in reduction of pollutant discharges to waters of the state of Colorado. Like many other municipalities, we're updating our codes to comply with some updated regulations from the state and other jurisdictions. We discussed this at the last time. There were a couple of issues that came up. One was where was sedimentation and erosion control. I think Trustee Sorelli had mentioned that. And we did prepare in our packet some explanation of what happened with those particular regulations. Let me just give you some comments on that. Those were formerly contained in Section 16-26-40, and they are now in more or less in Section 11. Some of those are ending up in 11-3-120 and others. For example, in item C on the standards, and these deal with standards for sedimentation and erosion control, the existing language describes requirements for soil erosion and sediment control development as well as construction requirements This language was removed because the proposed Chapter 11 references urban drainage and flood controls, storm drainage criteria manual, and Volume 3 has standards on best management practices. And so we felt that as that manual gets updated with best management practice that develops, we don't have to update this ordinance all the time. So it references that ordinance, and that references in Section 11-3-120. The second item was dealing with permits, and we had two permits in the old ordinance, land disturbance permits and grading permits, and they've been consolidated in one that's called stormwater quality permit. And the permitting procedures have moved to 11-3-100, and most of the procedural steps will be in a standard operating practice that we would adopt internally as a staff that tells permittees, what the procedure is, who reviews it, and so forth. So it'll be more or less an internal policy that we'll have. So those are most of the changes that were, and the comments that we received at our last meeting.
Thank you. Questions from the board? I just had one comment. So we reference urban drainage flood control districts criteria manual, Volume 3, best management practices. Can we say in the most recent or the most recent manual, just so we don't have to change stuff?
I think there's
Is it that way? I didn't cross-reference it.
There's three items. There's that one, there's our own Superior Metropolitan District standards, and then there's other practices that we feel would be of benefit. So there's actually three that we referenced.
And
Okay.
Mayor,
The language does say as amended.
And it's certainly, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for clarifying those things.
Questions or comments from the public?
Gladys Forshey, 404 South 3rd Avenue. I certainly hope that, since this has been amended, that when it comes time for the development of the Oshner property, that this Article 26, as it pertains to the development area, is followed, because there's lots of other things that is going on with that development that you've totally ignored when it comes to your rules and regulations in this town. So I certainly hope that Article 26 is followed, because one more time, I'm going to tell you that a complaint has been filed with the state of Colorado that's going to hold the feet to the fire regarding that development.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comment or questions? Anything else from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Gross.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance Number 0-6, Series 2012, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior amending Article 26 of Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code and Article 3 of Chapter 11 of the Superior Municipal Code, all relating to stormwater quality.
Motion by Trustee Gross, second by Trustee Williams. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 13, continued public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving the 2012 comprehensive plan. And just for the record, this is a continuation of the public hearing, and we've already had proof of publication. So with that, Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, as you mentioned, this is a continuation of the public hearing that we held on November 13th, 2012. The comprehensive plan update has been facilitated by Clarion Associates and its consulting team along with town staff. Process included 4 community meetings seeking input on the various parts of the plan, 4 joint planning commission town board meetings, as well as numerous updates on the website and other various publications of the town. We went through the plan at the November 13th meeting, took notes of comments from the board, incorporated those into the plan, Clarion did, and those are included in your packet for your review tonight. We also made changes to the number 2, I think, two of the opportunity areas that were also included in the updated plan for tonight's meeting. And then, I leave it up to the board on how you'd like to proceed, if you would want to go through each of the changes that were made, or if you would like to just go through each of the opportunity areas again, or to this.
Yes, so what I'd say is why don't you highlight what the changes are, and I don't know if you would like to do that, or one of the consultants would prefer to do that.
I'll have Darcy with Clarion come up.
Good evening, Darcy White with Clarion Associates. So I'll quickly walk through, just to recap, Opportunity Area 1, there were no changes that we made since the last draft. No changes to Opportunity Area 2. Opportunity Area 3, this was just a reference throughout in terms of how we refer to this parcel as the Town Center PD versus the Town Center Core for consistency with the recent adoption of the Town Center PD. No changes to the Town Center South area. The Anderson property, Opportunity Area 5, we did make some adjustments to the policy language on this site to reflect the comments that we received. We added a buffer area designation along US 36 to the map to reflect that desire for that buffer, but we have retained the residential designation for this site and also included the policy language that community-oriented uses may also be considered on this site.
And what does it stand in the current comp plan before your revisions?
The previous plan recommendation called for a mix of residential densities.
Thanks.
I think the question was different. What is it in the current plan?
Yeah.
In the 2006 plan?
Yes.
That's correct, a mix of residential densities.
In the 2006 plan?
I'm sorry, I may have it. I'm looking at the wrong one here.
I thought it was commercial.
Too.
I believe you're right, I apologize.
Yeah.
That's correct, commercial.
Commercial, okay. Opportunity Area 6, the Zaharias property. In the previous draft, there was a distinction, some discussion about not wanting to include multifamily on this site. We have carried forward a mix of residential, but we've gone back to the 2006 plan designation for the site, which called for more of a mix of uses, so some office, some commercial, and some residential. We have kept the distinction in the policy language regarding small patio homes, senior housing, assisted living, those types of uses. And we've also called out the desire to provide access to the reservoir to the south. On the Opportunity Area number 7, the Richmond property, we have changed this designation from the previous draft, which recommended moderate intensity residential, back to the 2006 plan designation, which was commercial on the southern half and office on the northern half, to reflect the feedback that we received. We have also maintained the language to that community-oriented uses may also be considered on this site. For Opportunity Area 8, the Calmonte property, we have gone from a residential designation to a commercial designation, which is, again, consistent with the 2006 plan recommendation. Also acknowledging that community-oriented uses may be considered in this area. Opportunity Area 9, there were no changes to this site. Opportunity Area 10, no changes, but we have added the graphics as requested for each of those, just as a reference. Similar changes on Area 11, just to add the graphic. And then Opportunity Area 12, the Level 3 property, no changes, just added the graphic. And those are the main map changes to the plan.
Great, thank you very much. And I just want to say up front, I appreciate the addition, if you did it or whoever, for the historical perspective. I think it's very helpful.
It was very good, too.
And anything else for presentation and questions from the board about anything that's been added? Trustee Pennington?
Darcy, we asked that the language that referred to Jefferson Parkway be modified to refer more generally to the regional beltway, and I could not find where that change was made. Could you get me there, please? I thought it was 8-something.
Policy 8.1H is the policy in question, and we did add some language related to whether or not the beltway should occur. We can add certainly additional language if you think additional language is necessary. We did make some tweaks to that policy. That's on page 8-2.
Other questions from the board?
We're going to have
Trustee Hansen.
public comment in a bit.
Yep.
I guess a question to the public. We had a lot of concern from the public at the last meeting about residential being put on opportunity areas, number 7. My first choice has always been that it should be parks, such as multipurpose fields and that sort of thing. But the residents it appears that there is overwhelming support to leave it as commercial, and I want to make sure that the residents understand that the way it's zoned now is up to 200,000 square feet of commercial space. And I'm not sure that everybody understood that, because I certainly wouldn't want to have 200,000 square feet of commercial and retail space sitting in my backyard. So I just want to make sure that they're aware of that. But again, my first choice would be to have it as field use.
Okay. Any other general questions? Otherwise, I was going to walk through the opportunity areas one by one. Trustee Williams.
I did have a question.
Trustee Williams and then Trustee Cirilli.
So I have several just little changes that I wanted to make throughout, but if we want to go over the opportunity areas first, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Trustee Cirilli.
My question, we are deferring the transportation plan, and my question is, where will that actually appear when we finally adopt it? Will it actually be an appendix to this document, or is that what the plan is?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Any other general questions?
Well, can I run through mine then?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to start with at the end with the transportation. There's a map here, and it reflects future roundabouts, future signals. I think this is not something that we have approved as the board, and I'm not sure I want to see this in the comp plan at this time.
If you take a look at the top of that map that you're looking at, shows strike-through on transportation plan.
Okay.
Pages 8-9 and 8-10, both of those maps have been removed in lieu of that transportation plan conversations.
Okay, well, it's not showing that in here.
It actually is cut off to the left side.
Okay, so then let's move on to the McCaslin Corridor Conceptual Plan. These two documents, or the graphics, again, it's part of the transportation plan that we have not fully vetted.
They have also been struck out, yeah. That's the only way we can show it is, if you look at the heading for that, those are
Making
struck.
sure. On what I'm showing, page 271, which is policy 8-1.K. It says the town should actively participate in any processes related to the Jefferson Parkway or Beltway Loop. And I would like to strike the Beltway Loop. I'd rather it say something like Northwest Corridor Transportation Improvements.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure there ever will be a Beltway. We don't know, and nor do I want to put in the word Beltway.
Okay.
I just think that this is the Northwest Corridor. That's how it's always been referred to. And if it does complete the Beltway, great. If it doesn't, too bad, unfortunately. But I think that just saying transportation improvements in the Northwest Corridor is what this area is about.
Deb, can I add on to that? I'd like to see us at the end of the Northwest Corridor, what you just modified, period, end of section. I believe the rest of it is all too much detail, where it says after that, should contact Jefferson Parkway Authority to ensure that the town receives regular updates, newsletters, et cetera, all that to the end. I believe it says exactly what we wanted to say when we say the town should actively participate in any processes related to the Jefferson Parkway or the
Northwest Corridor transportation improvements.
Period.
Because we don't know if we're going to be a part of the Beltway. I mean, I'm sure the Beltway will be completed someday, maybe 100 years from now, maybe 30, maybe 10, maybe 2. But we don't know if we're going to be a part of it. So I would rather it say Northwest Corridor transportation improvements.
Okay.
And then, so the Chapter 8 transportation, is all it's saying is transportation plan in that little paragraph right there? Is that the whole short and sweet and say referring to the actual document? Or are we throwing in all these policies, and wouldn't that be in our transportation plan?
You would include, all the policies to 8.1.R. So, yes.
So we're including all these policies, and then we're going to write a transportation plan and include those policies again?
Right.
Okay, so we're just duplicating ourselves.
The intent was just to have the broader gist of the transportation plan captured in here for consistency. There may be some additional detail that comes out in that work.
Okay, so my confusion, or what I'm finding difficult here, is it's not, if you're just reading this for the first time, you're not getting a very good understanding that there is another plan that you need to look at that is all-encompassing. The longer you make this chapter, the more difficult it will become. It'll just muddy the waters and make it more difficult for you to understand that there is a transportation plan that you should be referring to. Either that or put it into the comp plan so that it's all one document.
I mean, we could definitely do that if the board wished. I mean, we could just have the one paragraph and then have all the goals and policies and detail in the transportation plan if the board wants.
I would just add, though, I think it's important from a comprehensive plan perspective to maintain that linkage between land use and transportation, open space, all of those pieces. So I think it is important to kind of paint the whole picture of what the town is trying to do within this document. It's certainly an option, but I just want to make that point.
And I totally agree with you. Thus, I think the transportation plan should be in here, embedded into it and not just...
The intent was that it is embedded. However, we never got around to that, intensive effort. So I don't know if anybody would entertain that actually Chapter 8 be done separately and then inserted as Chapter 8 when it's finished, rather than referred to as an appendix.
My recommendation would be to leave the policies in here and that we would do a comprehensive plan amendment which would substitute Chapter 8 in its entirety.
When we have it? Mm-hmm. And so subsequent comp plans would then have that as Chapter 8?
Correct.
In other words, it'd be a much bigger document, right?
That's fine.
Right.
Okay.
And I assume there'd be some appendices associated with that, but yes.
And this chapter then refers to the appendix?
No, I think that's the whole chapter would be...
But I mean in our version.
We could either reference it that it's coming up or, it's work that we'll be doing shortly, and I see our Transportation and Public Works Director is wildly waving his hand for some suggestion.
Yeah, I think the way we had originally structured it, we had pulled out the major components of the transportation plan, the actual plan that shows the street network and so forth, and a lot of the basic summary documents and graphics and so forth to put in the plan, and then the appendix would have all the supporting documentation. How did we get to that plan? I mean, there's a lot of analysis that went into getting to projections and all that stuff. So that would be what would be in the appendix. And my feeling was, in the actual comprehensive plan, you got to have a map and so forth. So but we couldn't do it because you guys wanted to wait. So we pulled all that stuff out. So I mean, I think it's appropriate to come back after we
quite get the gist of that sentence.
And Darcy, this is out of the current plan, right?
In both.
This is language right out.
Yeah, both of these sentences are right out of the current plan, so if it's no longer valid and we want to change it, then certainly we can.
And that's what I say, that at least the top sentence here is, I don't think that's valid.
I think just a sentence that says the town of Superior values community participation in all of its decisions. You know, something as simple as that.
Yeah. I like that.
I agree with that. And let's see here. Bear with me, this is going very slow here. I thought there was one other change here. I think I'm good for now.
Okay, other board questions or comments? Then I was going to run through the opportunity areas one by one, just like last time, and I think that we'll board questions and then public comments regarding those. So this would be starting at Opportunity Area 1, which is on 76th Street properties, basically behind Costco and Target. And last time I didn't see any other comments or questions from the board, so I want to make sure that that's not true this evening. I don't see anyone from the public who wants to speak to Opportunity Area 1. Okay. That brings us to Opportunity Area 2, Rogers property. Trustee Skumatz?
I thought that it was currently office only, but is it currently, in 2006, is it office and residential, or is it pure office?
It's, yes, it's a mix.
Mixed use, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Public comment regarding this opportunity area?
Gladys Horsey, 404 South 3rd Avenue. I have two on this. One, there was comments on the CAC about putting these opportunity properties in the comprehensive plan. And I have to agree with that 100% because of the fact that if I owned one of these opportunity properties, you wouldn't be able to shut me up when it comes to having it included. Because it is none of the town's business how this is zoned, what this is planned for, on, until this person decides to do something or sell their property for someone else to. So these opportunity properties should be in no way included in the comprehensive plan. They're not ready to be developed at all. And some would prefer that they never be developed, whether it's in original town, whether it's in Rock Creek, whether it's residence or whether it's commercial. And I think this is just absolutely absurd to put these opportunity properties in this comprehensive plan. When they're ready to be developed, then look at what cannot be done with them. This property also is one that I commented on last time about the grid. The grid has never, ever been followed with the comprehensive plan. Whether it was in 1970 when we put this comprehensive plan in force the first time, or 72, whatever year it was in the 70s, or whether it's now. I understand that it's the 21st century, but if you're going to have something in the comprehensive plan, then you need to follow that code that you have for the town. The Oshner development was totally ignored about the grid. We have done petitions, we have been to meetings hollered. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the times that I've been hollered about the grid in original town. And I won't be quiet about it. It is absolutely absurd that you do not follow this grid pattern. Whether it's an opportunity in this 21st century comp plan that you're doing, or whether it was one when we created it. And when we created it, we expected it to be followed, and you are not following it.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comment regarding this area? I see our consultant was jumping up. Did you have something to add?
No.
So, let's see, just for clarity, it's an interesting question that you brought up. So, for clarity, we're not zoning anything this evening. We're not telling what a property owner can or cannot do. This is just a vision document about what the town, at this time, foresees might happen in the future. So, this is nothing set in stone here. And I think the rest of the board agrees that we need to make sure that we have some vision document about what we want to see, and I tend to agree with you about the grid concept, but when this property comes forward, we'll have more discussion about that.
One quick clarification on the site, too. It's hard to see in this PowerPoint slide, but the
There is a
grid
little note
is
there.
shown on there as a conceptual street alignment for that.
Right, and it says along McCaslin. I'm not sure if it was important to add just along McCaslin or whether or not just say it's encouraged.
And just as point of reference, we did soften the language up regarding the grid. It's when practicable or that kind of thing. So we're not tied to continuing the grid should it not be possible, depending on a PD or whatever.
And once again, I think I'm in the minority about this opportunity area, but I think it's an important buffer area for Original Town. They're going to be impacted by a lot, they've already been impacted by a lot of development, whether or not that be the marketplace or expansion of McCaslin and what's happening with the town center. So I would be certainly open about trying to minimize the impact on Original Town here and even use it as a significant buffer area, but I think those are a minority opinion, so I'm happy to state that. Trustee Skumatz?
And I think I do see it as, McCaslin is an area where I'm happy to see more in the way of business development, that sort of office and so on.
I also like McCaslin as the transition between the swank town center and then a nice transition to what's happening in Original Town, and I see this as a really nice transitional corridor.
Can understand that, and all completely valid. So, any other public comment or board comments regarding this area? I don't see anything, so let's move on to Opportunity Area 3, Town Center PD. Once again, we've gone through a big process regarding this, and I'm not sure if the town board has any other questions or comments regarding this.
Want to change it?
Let's see, no. Any public comment regarding this area? Okay, I don't see any. Let's go on to Opportunity Area number 4. So, yes, sorry, I'm getting my bearings. So, the Anderson property, and I don't think there was any
Actually,
other...
Town Center South.
Yeah, Town Center 4th, okay. I was going to say, I was like, there was some, I think, comments regarding this particular area. Trustee Skumatz, anybody have any thoughts about it?
Well, it's a little confusing now. Opportunity Area 3 is the short name is Town Center PD, and then Opportunity Area 4 is Town Center South. Why wouldn't we call Town Center North and Town Center South? Because those designations are not clear when you're using the shorthand.
We had Town Center Core as sort of the core area. We changed it to PD to be consistent with that document. But I think it really was just a question of what to call the southern area, so if there's another...
I actually like using the word core rather than PD there, to have Opportunity Area 3 be Town Center Core and Opportunity Area 4 Town Center South. To me, that's nice shorthand to refer to over time. It's not going to make or break this in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's a easier shorthand.
Any other board comments regarding that? Trustee Skumatz?
Yeah, this seems like we're saying it can be anything, and I guess that seems too open to me. I guess I was thinking it would, in the plans that I would have liked to have seen us choose 2 out of 3 or something like that, and my preference would probably be office be included as one of the 3, or one of the 2, but residential and recreation seems like we're just saying whatever we want to put there, and I think we should have more direction than that. That's fine.
Okay. And this area is, if I'm correct, I don't know if all of it is, but most of it's zone business office right
Yeah, it's
now
all-
with strict
it's all
zoning.
business office.
It's all office, yeah.
So, understand where you're coming from, Trustee Skometz. I mean, I personally would like to see business office over there if it was possible. I think it's going to be difficult to fill, so I might have this business office is encouraged, but the other opportunities, if they arise, that's connected to the town center core or PD, however we leave it.
That would be preferable language to me.
Say that again.
That I would, the highest priority would, that this would remain business office as it's already zoned. But that if there was some logical connection to the town center, say, a recreation plan came forward that we've seen various times, that would be acceptable as well. That would be the first preference.
I thought that this always contained that residential component. Are you saying lose that?
It's zone business office.
But what was the intent in all the town center discussions we've had towards how that would build out? If the town core, center core built out the way we have in the town center PD, how did we envision this building out?
It wasn't specifically addressed during the process.
I guess I drew some conclusions. And to me, this is consistent with the conclusions I drew, with the exception of the word recreation. Because of the Explore thing, if the Explore project were to go forward, that is actually not a recreation use, it's a business use. So that word recreation confuses me a bit. Is it intended to be recreation the way we all know recreation, which is like a park or a ball field for community use, or is it intended to be professional, recreational business-oriented business?
I think it was intended to provide a variety of options, and that the fact that project, if it were to go forward, there was some uncertainty of whether some of those recreational uses would be open to the public, maybe not, and that there was just need for more discussion and flexibility in what that use that was going to support the town center core would ultimately be.
So if Explore would go forward, I consider that a commercial enterprise, and the word commercial is not up there. So I'm confused on this one entirely.
Trustee Skometz?
And given that I got some clarification that this is not the property with which we have to share revenues with Louisville, I would definitely not want to see a recreation.
Right.
What is, if we could recapture the 2006 comprehensive plan language, it might just be adequate, but I can't remember exactly what that says for this property.
I've got it here, if somebody knows where to find it.
I mean, I can't tell you what that is off the top of my head, but we can go back and use that.
I think Trustee Pennington may have it.
Well, here, Matt, I got the plan.
Find it fast, yeah.
I find this to be such a preferable format, the one you guys have developed for this.
I think if you go to the map, I'm going to use map.
It has it as office.
That's what I thought I remembered.
Chris wanted to make another point.
I was just going to say, in thinking about the term recreation.
And you are, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Chris Strapinski from
Thank you.
Green Play. One of the things you might want to consider is indoor recreation opportunity. We talked about that possibly all being located in one place, possibly not. So there may be opportunity on that site that you don't
So
want
Chris,
to
what do you mean by indoor? Give me an example.
Well, it could be a dance space, it could be...
But would it be a commercial dance space or a
Not
community?
necessarily, it could be community. I just don't think you want to preclude the option.
Trustee Skumatz?
And I think it's important for that space to be revenue generating. So something that's not that, as I read recreation, would be a problem. Frankly, residential would be a little bit of a problem for me there, too.
Mr. Magley, you're leaning forward?
Yes, I just thought, I mean, you could change it to include commercial and community use, which could...
I don't think community use is what anybody's been considering for this.
Why couldn't we just say mix of uses to complement the town center, including but not limited to office and commercial, period?
Perfect.
How are you interpreting recreation?
That's what I just asked. I believe it's being, I think we should and must interpret it the way it's used in 98% of this plan, which is recreation, is town-sponsored recreation, non-revenue generating, basically, just play areas and hangout areas and that kind of stuff. And I agree with Lisa that I think the prime purpose here is revenue generation.
Because the way I interpreted that recreation, that Explorer did come in, that I consider that recreation.
Yeah, to me, that's commercial.
Probably had to pay for it.
No, to me, it's commercial.
Okay. But
A sports facility like the Boulder Valley Ice is commercial to me, not recreation.
It's way less ambiguous.
would office be considered commercial too, though?
Office and commercial.
So why couldn't you just say including but not limited to commercial, residential, and recreation?
That's not my intent. My intent is office and commercial.
Yeah, I guess I'm not excited about having a lot of residential there. I mean, if there's a minimum component of it, that would make sense, but I think that it needs to make sure, I mean, maybe we'll identify that for the town center to be very successful, we'll need to put some residential there. I understand that, but I don't think that that's our main vision of that particular area.
That's not the goal.
But then again, I don't want to preclude Explore as being an opportunity either, so. But I also don't agree that that's necessarily recreation. I don't necessarily agree that Explore is recreation, so.
Yeah, I don't think it is, not in the way we use it.
So.
I recommend
think that
including
I
but
think you're
not limited
recommending-
to office and commercial. Should another use be examined later on, that's why you have including but not limited to. So you do allow for other options.
And I completely agree with you, and you said it much more eloquently than I did, so.
I mean, Explorer is a sports-themed...
For-profit venture.
Commercial
Correct, so
enterprise.
that's very different than recreation, casual recreation, yeah.
And I think the operative word is mix, mixed use.
Mix of uses, I like that.
That's there, that's there.
Our consultants are quickly scratching out things and moving things, so.
So we're saying included but not limited to office and commercial, but the main intent being uses that will support the town center core. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, yeah. Mix of uses that complement the town center PD, which includes but is not limited to commercial and office.
I think office is commercial, but whatever, yeah.
I actually like both of them in there because it is a different type of commercial.
Okay. Public comment regarding this particular area? I want to make sure that staff and our consultants know what the language is. Feel
Yes.
comfortable with that?
I do.
Okay. So now, Opportunity Area 5. And this is next to 36 and
Do you have a
88th
comment?
Street. So questions from the board and then public comment for sure. Yes.
I think he has a comment on 4.
Oh, yes. I mean,
Area
if there's-
4.
Yeah, if there's areas for the south town center. Yes?
I just have a question on the point of the process here, and I apologize for coming in a little bit.
So process is that we were going to walk through each individual opportunity area and have board questions and comments and public comment regarding the specific area, and then move on to the next one.
Okay, it sounded like discussion, so I wasn't sure what order in terms of public hearing being open or closed.
Yeah, so, it's open and we're having public comment. So if you have a public comment regarding these areas, feel free, and otherwise we'll move on. So, and I know that you weren't at the mic, and Phyllis is probably looking at me askance, but... So, we're at 5, yes. Trustee Scrimmats?
So could you refresh my memory on what this one was in the 2006 document?
It's commercial.
Commercial.
That's what I thought, okay. Residential is not something I'm dying to see in this place either. I think that the commercial designation made sense to me, and I think that's my main comment.
Trustee Williams?
And I feel that because this borders current residential, that we need more community input in order to make a more informed decision as a board member. That's how I feel.
And I guess I haven't changed my comments so much last time, is that I think that this is needs significant buffering from US 36, and if a little bit of residential can go in there, fine, but I think that we really need to concentrate on noise mitigation and buffering from the highway. And I'd have a hard time putting a lot of that commercial behind somebody's house, but maybe it's just me. So, not sure where the board was with that, but any public comment regarding this particular area?
Jeff Chu, 1959 Cedar Ridge Circle. So yeah, I mean, in terms of all of these areas, in terms of residential or commercial, I mean, obviously residential doesn't pay itself. I think the point in this particular case of saying buffering, what is buffering? All you're going to do is put the onus on another set of residential who are going to say they're not buffered. Actually, the better buffer for the US 36 corridor is commercial, right? And in a lot of ways, the use is less impactful on the adjacent residents because people are there from 9 to 5. They're not there, 24/7, and it's not going to drive other businesses there. It's actually much more conducive to the adjacent properties to put some low-level office, the doctor's buildings, whatever else. If it sits empty, I'm sure those people, I think you guys brought up the point, well, can you fill it with residential or can you fill it with commercial? Is that viable or not? I'm sure a lot of the people would say they'd rather have it sit there empty for 20 years if it isn't. And from the town's perspective, I don't know that we're in any rush to say we have to fill those remaining pieces of property. What makes sense for the town, number one, and even what makes sense for the residents there. So, I mean, we've done this twice, 2001, 2006. We've come up with the same conclusion each time we've done it. So I'm just not sure why we'd be looking at changing it at this point in time. There hasn't been anything that's pushed to change this.
So I guess, I was going to say Trustee Chu, sorry, Mr. Chu, that I guess my perspective is there is a little bit of a rush depending on how Town Center moves forward because we need this as a transportation corridor. And if it sits empty for a long time without having that transportation connection, that would be problematic, I think, for the viability of parts of the Town Center.
And the last thing you want to do is drive more traffic through a residential, so even more so, it kind of fits into the nature of being commercial more so than residential, from that perspective.
Yes, thank you. Additional public comment regarding this opportunity area?
Can I have an explanation of where the entrance and exit points to 36 are on this property?
There aren't any.
Right. So, in fact, if we build commercial into this property, we would have to enter that commercial from Coal Creek?
Yes,
right?
88th.
88th Street, more likely.
Okay.
Or the town center.
Or the
town center. So you just have gone through all that commercial in the town center. I'm trying to, this is a difficult one for me as well, trying to figure out. I want the public to understand we have the major town center build out north of this, right? And this is a transition then with all the Rock Creek residential to the south. So it is a major transition point. Is is there any value to bridging this gap here, to say, add the word commercial in here, light commercial, and potential residential with buffer area along US 36? What's the downside of adding a commercial possibility in this description?
Well, I think just a reminder that Economic and Planning Systems did do a market analysis to kind of help us understand the viability of the different sites. And as Mr. Chu pointed out, because of the access and the other limitations, this is not a immediately viable site for commercial, and probably not for office either, given the amount of office that exists in the corridor today. So that's why we had moved in that direction. And looking at sort of that more balanced mix of land uses in the town. I don't think there's any necessarily a downside to including it, but it's just a question of when and how that property will develop. It's just going to give you more options and more flexibility.
If we were to do residential here, in your opinion, how many single-family properties or whatever could be on this piece?
I'm trying to remember the total acreage. I don't know off the top of my head. Just a clarification, though, the map designation right now is for medium density, which would allow for smaller patio homes or senior housing, which were some of the different types of housing that interest had been expressed in as part of this. It wouldn't necessarily have to be single family, and that in fact that would probably not be the ideal under that as part of that designation.
So one final question on the use of the word residential. In other parts of this plan, we're very specific about saying a mix of residential types or something. Here we just use that word residential. When I see the word residential, I think of single-family homes because that is so much of what we've got here. So would it be valuable to say a mix of residential styles or residential types or something like that? So it captures just what you said.
Well, and I think that's where we started. We did have that distinction in here in the previous draft, and I think we were moving towards more of that single-family, sort of lower impact residential. So I think, inherent in the description of medium-density residential is a mix of housing types, and I think that was the intent.
So we have moved deliberately towards the single-family home type of designation.
Based on the discussion at our last meeting.
Which was at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
We deny any.
Trustee Skumans.
And I guess I think I've been pretty consistent in not being in favor of trying to develop everything we can as soon as we can. And so the argument about, gee, we don't need, there's a corridor full of extra office space and we could get houses sooner, that's a counter-argument to me almost. I'm not dying to see houses because that's more likely to get developed. That's not sort of the direction I'm interested in seeing it. I care more about a mix of uses and I'd like to see commercial added in here.
If I could just clarify, too, I don't think the intent in doing the market analysis and sort of making some of these recommendations had so much to do with what's immediately viable, but really was based on that comprehensive look at the town, the overall mix of uses and what was going to serve the town best in the long term. So even if it doesn't happen, your chances are you're probably not going to see residential there tomorrow either. This is a 10 to 20-year plan, and that's kind of the perspective that we were trying to take.
Trustee Sorelli.
I always thought this property had the potential of somehow linking with the town center. And so keeping some potential commercial in this may well work in that regard. Just thinking of the existing residences, I'm not sure what kind of buffer they would get with a mixed density, but commercial addition gives them a 300-foot buffer by our code, in addition to the buffer that we're talking about on. I think it kind of makes sense to include commercial in this, and I think it could actually work when the town center is developed as a continuation of what's happening with the town center.
Makes sense.
So would you suggest some language?
Well, I would actually, as I sit now, let's just leave it as it was in 2006, which was commercial with buffer area along 36.
I guess I don't personally have any strong opinion one way or the other about it. I just want to make sure that we're cognizant and careful in protecting the residents of the area. So I don't think any particular development's going to happen there anytime soon, but it is important that the transportation corridors be able to be connected in a somewhat timely manner.
I think what Joe suggests, or what Trustee Sorelli suggests, is a good suggestion.
I don't know that I'm happy with reverting just to commercial. I'm happier with saying a transitional corridor that could incorporate a variety of, a transitional corridor between the commercial town center and the residential north part of Rock Creek that could accommodate a variety of uses or something like that, and more so put on the map that we view this as a transitional corridor between single-family residential and the commercial town center. So I'm more comfortable designating it as a transitional corridor between the town center and current Rock Creek residential than just calling it commercial.
I agree with that, and the fact that everyone here has a different opinion, and I'm sure if we talk to the residents in this area, we would get still another different opinion. So I don't feel comfortable just labeling it commercial. I feel that we need to, first of all, I feel we need community input for this particular area, a little bit more than what is here today. And I don't know if there's anyone here for Opportunity Area 5 or not. If so, I hope you're here and you can speak to that. So I really don't want to limit this.
One suggestion might be that we don't have outside of the town center right now just a mixed-use designation that would give you, I mean, a lot of what I'm hearing is this desire for flexibility, and maybe there's a need for that designation for a site like this where nothing quite fits exactly.
And I think Trustee Pennington, hit the nail on the head that, this is a mixture of uses and is seen as a transition area between town center and in the single-family neighborhoods. So I think that's a reasonable approach.
And Mayor, I just wanted to add a couple points. This property is included in the Rock Creek Ranch PUD, so it has a commercial zoning already.
Right, which is, I was going to bring this up earlier, later, but feel free to.
And the setbacks, since it's in the Rock Creek Ranch PUD, are different than what's in the land use code.
Okay.
So you have the 300, but there's a set of setbacks that are in the Rock Creek Ranch PUD that would apply first.
Okay.
So it wouldn't necessarily have.
I did have the opportunity.
Necessarily be 300 feet.
Correct.
It's not, I was reading the FDP, Rock Creek Ranch FDP, and there's discussion of buffer areas and setbacks, but they're not the 300-foot setbacks that we talk about in other areas.
Correct.
So do I have a general head nod of mixture of uses?
Yes.
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 Okay. That brings us to Opportunity Area 6. There were some comments at the last meeting regarding this. Any questions or comments from the board? Public comment regarding this area? Come on down.
Jeff Chu, 1959 Cedar Ridge Circle. So, I'll say this, and it applies really to the last property. I think the thing to keep in mind, you guys all have done this, and some of you have been on the previous comp plan reviews, is to consider this sort of the vision and the planning document that says this is what we want if we could have it. There's always the opportunity to say, this is a great design someone wanted to propose, they talk to staff, the staff says, no, it's not in the comp plan, its comp plan says it's this, and if staff has the direction that says, we'll consider that, you can always do a comp plan amendment. A comp plan amendment can take a couple months, it's not a huge thing, so you can accommodate these other pieces. The concept of saying, we want to say our vision is residential says, you will have megaplexes. We went through how many different megaplexes, 16 to 32 units per block, even on this piece of property across the street. If you put in your comp plan that the vision is residential, you're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of staff time, a lot of your time having all of these residential properties, and you're going to feel obliged to address them, and you're going to feel obliged to go through. So if someone's coming forward with a megaplex, you know what? If it's zoned, if it's spec'd out in the comp plan as commercial, you're going to say no right away. You don't have to worry about it because it's not one of the uses for the comp plan as part of your vision. Someone comes across with some great thing that's a mixture of uses and everything else like that, you can make the change and you can accommodate that. So just consider what is the vision that you want to have that's right for the town in terms of what our funding is going to be, what kind of revenue we're going to either generate, what kind of jobs we're going to generate to help alleviate traffic so we're not all driving to Boulder or somewhere else to work, or, what do we want the town to round out to be? Because we know in this quarter you can get residential. If you're willing to put you can just go look over in Broomfield. If you say, I want to go ahead and put a multiplex on there, you will get a multiplex. There's no one stopping people from putting housing up in this corridor, right? If that's what you want to invite, then, but to me that's not the vision of what we want the town, or what we've talked about, even for the last 10 years when we have had lots of community input. And I respect the push to say we need community input. So, that's very good. We should have more. But in general, there's nothing to stop this, right? You can accommodate those great, wonderful things in the future.
Okay. Thanks, Trustee Williams.
So, Jeff, what I think I'm hearing you say is that not to limit it and to broaden the scope of the ideas that we want to vision for this particular property or any of the different properties. So I'm getting the feeling that you feel that if we limit it and just say just commercial or just residential, that is kind of tying our hands.
She's saying beware residential.
He's saying don't say the R word.
Don't say residential, or that's all you're going to get. If you say commercial and staff has direction to say if these are the types of things that may or may not be interesting, we might consider in exchange for something else, right? That's a conversation you can always have in the future, right? But if you just put residential out there, as a consideration, we know this development community in this region. You will get residential coming forward, and that is all you'll get.
So here we say mix of residential, office, and commercial.
You will get residential coming forward with this language.
Jeff, I have to disagree with you on this particular one. I don't disagree with you in general comments, and I only speak for myself. The fact is, I am an advocate, and I believe we've got to make completely clear to the development world out there that we feel we need new types of residential in this community that keep empty nesters in this community rather than forcing those of us who want to downsize to a nice quality of structure to leave to go to Louisville or to go to Broomfield or whatnot. So this, for me, is a very deliberate. It's not an accidental or a careless designation here, that we actually want this mix of residential that would include small patio homes and senior housing. And we could add the word empty nester and senior housing, et cetera, et cetera. But in this plan, I do believe we've got to be that specific so that we actually attract those developers that are willing to bring that product to this community.
And I appreciate your thoughts, Trustee Bennington. I think that's where we disagree, because I think when you see what the patio homes, you can go look in Louisville where they're putting some patio homes on, you're going to look at it and you'll say, oh my gosh, those are so dense, we wouldn't want those, and you'll see the density and the coverage on there that will make you...
Well, but we can control that through the approval process. But the fact is, right now, we've not yet attracted those types of high-quality developers of empty nester, senior type of products. So this is a very deliberate thing for me. I am not speaking for anybody else.
Okay. Trustee Skumats.
When it says consistent with the 2006 plan at the end there, is that whole writing consistent with the 2006 plan, or are you only talking about commercial being consistent with the 2006 plan? Where does that refer to?
The mix, the designation on the land use map is consistent with the 2006 plan. The policy language has added some new distinctions in terms of the patio homes and the senior housing that Trustee Pennington mentioned. So, but the land use designation itself is consistent with the old plan.
It currently says something like mix of residential, office, and commercial.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Thank you.
And I guess I don't see any reason to change from that. I mean, I think, I totally agree.
Along with residential proposals there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a logical nexus between assisted living and senior housing and the hospital, like a Balfour type of, no, I mean, it's true. So, you know, seniors tend to have medical issues, so I think it is, that's why Balfour and places like that are built there, and I think this is a logical place for something like that. I mean, if commercial wanted to come there, you know, depending on the type, fantastic. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime, since it's been there in this designation for a long time, so. But that's why I wouldn't want to preclude that as an opportunity.
Right.
So the mixed residential and commercial, I think, is a reasonable approach.
I think you're getting a head nod.
And I don't want to take out small patio homes and senior housing and assisted living in that. I don't want a proposal to come forward that is single-family homes.
Right. I don't think any.
We already have that, and I think what we're missing is transition homes from 55 plus or whatever age is needed in our community, because if you're 60, 65, or whatever age, and you don't want your two-story home anymore, you're not going to really find a one-story. There might be a few, good luck, but, and other options of senior housing and assisted living, all the different variable levels that, you know, go along with senior living. And you would have to move out of this community. And if you've been here your whole life, or most of your life, that would be important to you to stay. So I do want to make sure that in a lot of these different areas, when we say residential, we make it more specific to this, because that's what I support for residential.
And I think that you have complete unanimity, probably with everybody in this room, that there's zero interest in single-family houses there. So.
In semantics there, I would delete the word small. Patio homes, by definition, says what it needs to say.
I agree.
You know, just the one thing about senior housing and assisted living, I would almost pull that out away from small patio homes, because that's, more, to me, assisted living is more of a commercial enterprise. Right?
I would make a comma there, not a slash. I would say small patio homes, senior housing, and assisted living. You know, to me, it doesn't have to be that slash there. Or just small patio homes and senior housing. I mean patio homes and senior housing, get rid of the assisted living.
They're not the same thing necessarily, so just make it a comma or whatever.
Patio homes and senior housing, or patio homes, comma, senior housing and assisted living. Or assisted living, office, and commercial, you know what the point is.
Yep.
Okay. I think there's general consensus with that, so let's see, that brings us to opportunity area number I think that we took public comment, unless if there's additional, I'm happy with more, but there might be some people to speak to opportunity area number 7, but...
To the relief of the audience, very patient audience, we have made it to number 7.
We should have held that one for last, so we keep it appropriate.
Right, exactly.
So they have to stay here as long as we do. I like that.
So, you can see where the current draft is and where it's recommended. I think this is really an important point, though, that the manager made earlier, that this is already in the Rock Creek Ranch PUD. It's already zoned planned development, and there's the, you know, I've seen some emails about, well, there's a 300-foot setback requirement. That does not occur in this area, so just for clarity. And I was also reading the FDP, and some of the, I think this is CAC subzone, if I remember this correctly. Some CAC's subzone, depending on the lot, is either 40 or 60 feet. And I don't know if this is in that group or not.
This is, the planning area that this is, the maximum building height would be 60 feet.
Okay, that's what I thought, but...
What's a CAC subzone?
Community activity.
Right, so within the Rock Creek Ranch plan development, there's 3 different types of uses, regional activity center, neighborhood activity center, and community activity center. The CAC is the sort of the medium group. I don't think we have any regional activity centers left because W470 didn't go through, but that would potentially have heights to 150 feet. So, but there's nothing of that. And I think that, so I think the Safeway area is a CAC zone. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's correct. So that's the type of development that this would include, up to 60 feet.
And is there a designation in the PD about the buffer between the residential at the north, where you have that row of shrubs or whatever there? What distance is that?
There's a discussion that says they're buffer area, but it's not very clear cut.
Depending on, so there's different classifications in the Rock Creek Ranch PUD for residential. There's R1A, R1B, and R2A, and R2B. And they all have, so I'd have to go back and check that. But it starts anywhere from 30 feet, and then if it goes above 30 feet in height, the structure, it increases by 6 inches, the setback. So depending on the height of the building, it could be 30 feet or greater.
Right. So as this is currently zoned, commercial south half, office north half, the office could the office be 60 feet high in the PD? And if it's 60 feet high, you might have a 30-foot, 45-foot buffer, just somewhere in the range so people can visualize how close that office could come to those homes.
But it's the board's prerogative to choose, correct? I mean, if there's a development that comes through that is office, commercial, and we want a 150-foot buffer or a 300-foot buffer, we can declare that.
Something we would work through with the developer.
So, any questions or comments about this? I mean, I think from my perspective, residential is going to be less intense development compared to the neighborhood, but just my personal opinion. So if there's no other board comments, I'm sure there's plenty of public comment regarding this particular area.
I mean, can I say something?
I'd rather hear what they have to say first before.
Okay, right, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yes, that's where we're at.
Perfect.
Mark Kennedy, 2415 Andrew Drive. Chris Hansen, Trustee Chris Hansen had a comment earlier on this piece, and last week as well, if I'm not mistaken, suggested an opportunity of having it as a park or a field. Mayor seems to want residential on both occasions, and I was just wanting to open it up to the rest of the trustees to have a conversation about what other options we can have here apart from commercial or residential, because it's not that we were wanting commercial, and I agree with some of the comments based on commercial space in this piece of land. It's about the fact that we were trying to fight our fight when we were here a couple of weeks ago to prevent residential plans from going forward. So I'd like to know what you think about other options, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment regarding this area?
Well, if I could just
Trustee
repeat
Pennington.
something from the last hearing, and I know you all heard it, the fact is that's a privately owned piece of property that has a significant market value. So the challenge I face up here, and I think my peers face this too, is that the landowner has the right to make some money on that property. So, it's a tough one. It clearly is a tough one. I personally, I'll stake a claim on this. I don't have any problem reserving the draft designation as put forth there, but I would want to make clear to this entire group that that simply is to preserve the conversation for a later time when development proposals come forth, and that the community should be prepared for those conversations and should not go home saying, oh, it's going to be commercial. I think that it is just delaying the conversation till a later time.
Okay. Additional public comment?
Good evening, I'm Maureen Canwisher, 2335 Andrew. And I just want to comment for many of us that are still here or not still here, feels like we're still here. We're here 2 weeks ago, that our goal that evening, it was specifically not to have it rezoned as residential. And because we have been receiving letters from a developer and seeing maps and looking like, boy, if this passes, we're going to have homes 30 feet behind our fence within a matter of months. So our entire goal as our group was simply not to have it rezoned to residential in this plan. And that we would work with whoever and whenever it takes place, just as Trustee Pennington just said, to find out what is the best use for that land for the community as a whole. And I think another point that we want to make is that this just doesn't affect the people that are just adjacent to this land. I've been very pleasantly surprised by how many people who don't even live near this land are adamant not to have it rezoned to residential, and I think would choke if they knew that it would be commercial. But at this point, the whole idea is that not to rezone it at this time, thus giving the green light to a developer to be able to come in and start licking their chops saying, oh, raw meat, we can build here.
Thank you. Board comments? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, what I'm personally trying to do, and I think that and I see Mr. Chu standing, so I don't know if he has a comment or otherwise.
He usually holds a pen up if he has a...
Right. Yeah, yes, please. Well, where I was in the middle of this, and I don't want to cut anybody off, was basically what I'm trying to do is protect the property owners in that area. It's a similar issue that I have with Rogers Farm area. I think that if we're building, if with potential for building 60-foot commercial buildings in that area, is that good for the town's bottom line? Fantastic for us. It's low impact. We get a lot of money from it, but is that a good use for the neighborhood? I personally just have a hard time with that, but obviously the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I'm sorry for interrupting.
Dan Walkus, 2345 Andrew Drive. So I'm probably one of the ones who's been sending out the email and spamming all of your inbox. So I apologize. I'm probably the one that you mentioned earlier, Mayor Buckle, about the 300-foot. So there might have been some confusion on my part about the 300-foot setback. I think, and part of this was addressed in that letter I sent, but really the comparison I was making was with the 2001, I believe it was, urban planning document. And that one showed a substantial setback, although it did not say what the setback was in particular. So just to follow up with what Maureen had stated earlier, what we kind of coalesced around was the fact that this residential development that was proposed did not look like something that we would necessarily favor for that parcel. And so thanks very much for considering our input on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Trustee Gregoris?
Yeah, I think this is a very sensitive piece of property, and I think traditionally it's been designated that it would get developed at some point, right? That's been part of the plan.
Commercial and office.
So I have to agree with you, Mayor. If I lived on Andrew Drive and I would much prefer to have neighbors' homes versus some really tall structure that's commercial. That might be noisy. So I'm a little bit confused about where you're coming from.
And just along those lines, because it's zoned CIC, the board has great latitude in enforcing some things, like the setback could be something significantly different from whatever a developer would recommend. So,
I mean, obviously the idea would be to maybe have a community center and the rest of it be open fields and parks and green and space, and you can preserve your views of it to the west. But
Somebody's got to buy it
Right.
and develop it in that manner when it doesn't produce any revenue for them. So it's a challenge.
Aesthetically and the political correct answer would be, yeah, let's do that if we can. But from a business point of view, I'm not sure who's going to come forward to do that.
A philanthropist.
Yeah, I mean, if we had a benevolent benefactor to the town of Superior that would buy it and put his name on a huge park, and that would be great, but...
all right, so
anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Additional public comment regarding this area?
Hello again, Eric Wiener, 2334 Alpha Court. I got a few things here. One is, this is not really a sample of the entire population, and we haven't really had, I don't feel like I'm the leader of anything, and for me, even to get together with the few neighbors I've had to in the last month has been really difficult, on top of having holidays and all that other stuff. So, although I agree with a lot of what my neighbors think, some of them want things that I'm like, well, that's not for me, but I have to see the bigger picture. But we're still only getting a really small sample here. So for you to make a decision now for everything for the future seems drastic. I don't remember the word office coming up in the last meeting at all. Commercial, from what I heard, again, from when I purchased my property, it was light commercial, it could be a library, it could be a community center, and from what I, again, understood was it would be essentially this area down here. So there was really never a discussion to me about what the distance of that buffer was. It was just that that was the property that they were interested in developing, not necessarily this entire plot. I've spoken to a few of you, went to a couple of different meetings last, maybe 2 weeks ago, and you had mentioned, well, a few things, but also combining this with opportunity number 8. And, I spent a little bit of time this week. I drove around, saw some of the views, went out, walked on the trails to look back. And I think it's nice having that open space. And I understand that there's developers, and I also understand there's a lot of history that I was not privy to before, which I got caught up on a lot of, Richmond maybe didn't leave the best taste in everyone's mouth. And I don't really know the full story. I wasn't here for the fight, but I know that there's definitely some controversy there. So for me, to hear you also say that you owe something to the developer who kind of, wasn't so great for you, I'm not seeing the push for that either. So again, maybe we don't have all the pieces. Maybe we're not sure if we want commercial, if we want it to be a park, or what the actual saying, okay, let's turn it into a park. What does that mean? All of a sudden now, is there going to be a ball field directly behind our house? And is there going to be an ice skating rink there suddenly? Like, what's the process that we have to go through to say, how do we get what we want? And this doesn't seem to be the forum for that. This seems to be, you're trying to get the big picture of the entire, there's a huge community here, there's a lot of different places you've talked about. I've been listening where it sounds like, I think we had a discussion about, 55 and up living, and how you wanted maybe Section 8 to have some of that and maybe bleed into this. And I had mentioned, the idea of parks, especially near the trailhead, was great. And maybe a fitness trail, and trying to figure out a way to make it a nice green area, so maybe it wasn't a ball field necessarily, but it's an open field, and kids can play there. But again, is this the place for us to really talk about that? Our goal, which has been stated before, was we wanted to come down because we had something in our mail that said, we want to build these houses. And it was right up against our fence lines. So as far as what you had said, what's the lesser of two evils in a sense? Do we want houses that might be up against our house, or buildings that block the view? Well, that seems like, some pretty crappy choices right now to not have all the information on. So, granted, I don't think that I'm the one who should speak for everyone here, but I know that I'm against most of what I see here. I'd like for the discussion to be, can it be talked about for parks? Can we talk about, I don't know, were we saying that Richmond was asking for like $1 million at this point? And I think we even joked around about, why don't we offer them like 30 cents on the dollar and see what happens? Because at this point, they've held on to it this long, do they even want it anymore? Everyone wants to wash their hands of each other. I don't even know where that money would come from. Again, this is all kind of new to me. I've been trying to learn as much as I can, but it seems rushed and confusing and sensitive. And it feels like, it seems like, when I came here 2 weeks ago, I was angry at everybody. I was like, what do you mean? What are we doing? And I've had a chance to learn more and to get to know everyone and hear their views and why we got where we are at this point. So I feel more informed, but still, this is still not enough time. And even though I really like my neighbors and they are very cool people and have some of the same feelings that I do, we haven't been getting together, in coffee clutches and talking about this. This has been a rough 2 weeks in timing. So, I know that I walked around and put out about 50 flyers just to make people aware that this was happening, because what we spoke about 2 weeks ago was that you were going to do that. And I went to a meeting and we basically showed on the web, there's basically a sign-up link for the email blast that we were talking about. And I was saying that I'm pretty good at getting around on the internet. I've been doing it for a long time. And there are people who are not so good at it. But I asked the gentleman who was working that night and going through it and seemed very familiar with the site itself to show me where you sign up for this. And I would say a good 5 minutes went by before he could find a link. And I even was saying, isn't that the link right there? It says it right there, sign up, click here. So we finally clicked on that, and it basically brought you right back to the homepage. So that link that you've been relying on to communicate with everyone and get information out was a dead link. And it's the one major facet of why, you're saying, well, we have reached out. So, with that said, there's not enough information here for me. There's not enough time for me to say that this is okay. I also understand that there are people who are owed whatever they're owed. I don't know why this property, number 7, especially again that it's Richmond, is suddenly owed an answer when 1 through 6 and 8 through 12 are not necessarily such a rush. As far as the residential stuff, I think it's been stated enough times why we showed up and why we said we weren't into it. I definitely don't remember the conversation of office. And like I said, the term light commercial, which was for a community center or a library, was always what that was planned for. And again, I wish I had this in writing and I wish I had names to fall back to, but when I bought my house, this is why I bought it. I had it so that I knew that I'd have this space. I knew, they said, there would never be residential here. I would always have some space behind my home. Granted, if it was up to me, it'd stay how it is forever. I know that that's not an option. I'm okay with, a dirt grass field there, but if it was developed into some sort of park and there was green there for the community to come around, I see a lot of people out there, even though there isn't grass, that I think it's nice. And again, if you go walk around in this area, there are a lot of opportunities that we've been looking at, and granted, I haven't walked all of those streets as well, and there was a gentleman who came here 2 weeks ago and talked about how everyone would want open space. But there are a lot of people's views who wouldn't necessarily be affected. Granted, most of these on Andrew Drive, of course, would be directly affected, but it goes much further. I actually like driving around in this area, going up to Best Buy and driving back and seeing the foothills from this whole area. And I know that going to this open space meeting that there were a lot of conversations with how you go about acquiring this stuff and why you pick the lands that you pick. And I think that that's great and it's interesting. And I understand that there's a lot of money put aside for much bigger footprints. But at the same time, as much as that's really nice that we're trying to preserve it for everyone, there are people right here in this community that spent money on trying to get these views. This is why I came here. I could have bought a house in Boulder, but I wanted to actually see the mountains. I wanted to be just far enough away that I could still be able to see it all and involved. And this little area, along with number 8, I was driving down from Torrey Peak going on...
I'm just going to ask you to wrap up.
I'm sorry, I was going to say that when you hit an area that's like that, it's a nice big open space if you've checked it out. So turning this area into parks, to me, would be much better for everybody, not just myself. So, to wrap it up, I don't know where office came from. I think we definitely had said we were interested in open space. I saw that listed in other properties. It wasn't listed here. I think we also said in many of the letters that we wrote, we're interested in parks, and I don't see that listed here either. So if you have to put a final stamp on something, I'd rather it be relating to what the people here are at least stating, and no one is saying that they wanted commercial or office, they just said they didn't want residential. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Rachel Bray, 2355 Andrew Drive. I'll make mine really short. This is why we were motivated to say we didn't want residential. Very dense, 60 units. I'm right there in the middle. I had an opportunity to buy a house on the other side of the road, but it looked straight into somebody's living room, and I didn't want that, and I still don't want that.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcella McDonald, 943 Grays Peak Drive. I don't live anywhere particularly near this parcel. I'm up by the South Pole, yet I run right on the trail along Colton about 3 times a week. And I love the open space. We bought a home here about 6 months ago for the open space. So for me, it's what I enjoy, and I only found out about the meeting 2 weeks ago through the moms group, and I didn't even know there was a community message board, just found out about that. So I feel like I'm not the only one that could be here, that would be here voicing their opinion if they knew more of what was going on. So I don't know, I feel like more outreach to the community would be better. We are such a small community that I am not adjacent to this property, but I feel like it does affect me. I would be running right by something commercial or through more housing if I wanted to. So I feel like everyone that's here uses all of Rock Creek. Most people walk their dogs every day. They're not only on the 2 streets where they live. They walk the whole community. So I feel like parks and open space are what was important, and we were in Boulder, and that's why we choose to move here. So I feel like it should be kept as much as the way as it is if it can be.
Great, thank you very much.
Jeff Cody, 2420 Andrew Drive. Thanks again for the hours at the last meeting and the time tonight. I appreciate the changes that you made. In being consistent, this is a quick, kind of crazy idea, but in being consistent with Trustee Hansen's ideas and Mayor Muckel's suggestion to avoid the gigantic commercial buildings, I would just love semantically if we moved community-oriented to the front and said community-oriented uses should be a priority. Again, this doesn't change zoning like has been made clear many times, but if it's a guiding document, if it's a vision, that might just be a nice little attention getter. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much.
Jeff June, 1959, Cedar Circle. So I mean, we've gone through a bunch of this. The only thing I'll say is, yes, there are landowners. Yes, there's value to the land. The value of the land is whatever the value is as CAC. To change things and push it towards residential changes what the value is. Is our job here to facilitate for the landowner what the value is to make it worth more? We know that right now as CAC, it's not being developed. Hasn't been developed for 10 years. We've done studies for at least twice. It says it may never develop as CAC because of it, so it may sit there for another 20 years. Does that kill us or not? Yes, I understand that you want to bring additional or different housing stock in here. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that around the town center and really actually augment the town center as opposed to saying we're going to put, 85-year-olds driving from here to go to the town center 3 miles away. Maybe it should be integral to what that town center is so that it is in walking distance or whatever else for us so that we don't have to drive. So if you want to look at the housing stock, look at it as a whole and say where does that housing stock belong? Housing for the sake of housing costs us money. So if something's going to develop here and you're going to say it's going to be housing or it's going to be office or commercial, and for those who don't want that, I respect that. But at least that will bring 2 things. It'll bring jobs here, which will help traffic, alleviate some of the traffic, hopefully so we can work in our own town as well, right? And then 2 is it'll bring a tax revenue that's positive, and everybody knows, common knowledge is housing costs more than it brings in. So again, I look at it and say, leaving it here consistent with CAC doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't promote moving it forward. If there's some other reason to bring housing in here, I know that the plot shows some other area. I don't know if there's some land swap thing going on here that we don't know about, but if that's the case, then bring it up and say it so that everyone knows that that's the case. If that's not the case, then why do we want to make this housing? You've designated another area to bring in that? Let it be that.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely, there is no swap going on here.
So big blank Sandy there.
I do have to reply. There are a couple of, I tell other members of the board, sometimes silence is deemed to be agreement. And Jeff, I have to take issue with a couple of things. One, no, there is no swap. What you're seeing on that particular plat is I believe, a 2-acre dedication to the town for what might be a community center, and for practical purposes, it's been established 2 acres isn't enough anyway. So there is no plan being hatched up here. Also, I don't necessarily agree with the statement that houses brings more traffic than commercial. Those employees have to get to work some way, and they have to get home some way, et cetera. Also, rooftops support retail. So if I can say what we're after as a board is balance. We have to balance this all. We've got to figure out how this vision works over the long haul. So just for that.
No, I know you hate debating, Andrew, but I mean,
I don't mind debating, I just try not to do it at a town board meeting.
Yeah. In general, it's 10 traffic, 10 road trips per house for residential, and for retail or for commercial, it's going to be at most 4 coming in and going out for lunch, if that's the case. So from a traffic perspective, but I didn't bring up traffic. I brought up the tax revenue and the tax base and the dollars that come in versus what goes out in terms of support for police, fire, the road maintenance, and everything else.
Maureen Kenwisher, 2335 Andrew. I actually just have a couple of questions, because now I'm confused. Who owns that land right now? Richmond.
I think so, yeah.
You think so?
I mean, we don't know for sure. I mean, whether or not somebody sold it, I don't know, but,
Okay.
I mean, we're not privy to that.
I thought we did
business
know that.
information, but I
We
assume
don't know who owns the land in our town?
you could do it properly. I mean, it's not something we keep track of. I assume Richmond still does, but we could do a deed search
Yeah.
if needed.
Yeah, Mayor, that's correct. Richmond still owns it.
And so, I know that over the years, they've attempted to have it rezoned to residential so that they could build. It's their land, they want to build houses, that's fine, it's always been turned down. Now I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Richmond has approached Center Development and Ryland Homes in order to, since they're not having any success being able to utilize that land, to sell it to Ryland, doesn't have the history that Richmond has with the town, let Ryland take over the land, then try to have it rezoned and build housing on it. Is that true?
Once again, I don't think anybody here is privy to what the business transaction is. I mean, I think that that's a reasonable assumption, but I want to speak for the property owners.
Well, have you met with people from Ryland and from Center Development?
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't told you what their plans are?
Ryland Homes presented a concept plan to the town board.
I was here for that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, you can read in the background that if they're presenting a concept plan, they have some reasonable hope of acquiring the land. What we're not privy to is any conversations between the parties.
Okay, I understand that. So my next question is that, let's say that we keep this as it is suggested today, and now Ryland Richmond owns this land. Their options are to either sit on it, or to try and have it rezoned, or what?
Sell it.
Sell it.
And who could they sell it to?
Ryland.
What are the options?
They could sell it to anybody they like.
Any
They can sell to anybody.
commercial developer, anybody, they could sell it to you.
Okay. They could try.
To the residents on Andrew Drive, they can sell it to them.
Yeah. I give $1,000 towards it.
I actually think, Maureen, you've been effective enough here that I think you should go to Richmond and ask them to just hand this over to the town as park ground. I think you might just be successful.
So I just wanted to understand, what are the options? Because as Trustee Hansen brought up earlier, he's always looked at that being a park or being some type of community use, and I don't think that anyone who were faced with the choice of, do we want a 60-foot office building or do we want a park back there, would have much of a debate. I think that's would be very interesting to hear, regardless of whether it brings jobs or what else, higher taxes for the town. I don't think that's an issue. And I think I can speak on behalf of my neighbors, is that, our only point, as I said earlier, was to not have homes built 15 feet from our back fence. The easiest way for us to get there with the short amount of time that we had to plan for the meeting on November 13th was to say, no changes. Do not rezone this at this time. So now we're going back, and I can pretty much assure you that we're not done with this yet. But we need the time to get together, to talk with you, to understand what our options are, to understand what the rules are. All these acronyms that are being thrown around, I don't know what they mean. I can't speak intelligently to them. I will someday, but right now I can't. So my whole goal to be able to do this evening is to know that we're not going to have bulldozers building heinous duplexes behind our house in the next couple of weeks. And that if it ends up being commercial and it stays that way for a year or 2 years, or until it gets sold, or until there's another option to develop it, then we can come back and we can look at it and we can see what are our options and discuss that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, Maureen, you do have that time. Nothing is getting decided today that will preclude. The only guarantee that I can tell you is that Richmond will not be built on that property.
You can't find future boards.
Well, I can tell you for the next 2 years, this board will not
We're on it
happen.
for 4 more years.
Well, for 4 more years. The likelihood of Richmond ever building here is nil, as far as I'm concerned.
And if you want to look at, this piece of property as commercial, and the owner is a residential builder, then it's not possible for them to build on this. So, just food for thought.
Additional public comment, and then we'll probably need to wrap up this section here.
Yeah, Rachel Bray again, 2355 Andrew Drive. I'll make it really quick. Couple things I forgot to mention. I saw at least 50, probably 60 geese in that property yesterday, just hanging out, having a good time. So it's not just the people and the dogs that like it. It's other wildlife. And then from what I understood, that Ryland Homes has an option with Richmond, and I think it depends on the zoning, all that stuff. You'll have to ask them for details. But I do want to let people know, now's your chance, buy Powerball, big. You can do something with it.
Thank you. So, board discussion, so where it's left right now is, commercial office, once again, so sort of the same thing, but Trustee Skumatz?
So I guess I have a couple of things to say. One is that I think making sure that this doesn't go to residential is important to me, both because I'm not crazy about seeing residential there. I'm also not, I think that will make sure that things don't happen soon, which I think is important, because I really believe that if it's designated residential, that's so attractive to builders that happens regardless of what makes sense more generally. I don't have a problem with the designations as we see them there, but what I don't want to do, from my point of view, I can't see us designating that. From my point, I can't see me designating it park or other things like that, because we've spent many millions of dollars buying hundreds of acres right across the street from that as open space, and to say, to spread that across the street, I think is just a nice hope, but I don't think that makes sense from the town's point of view. So.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Trustee Henson?
Yeah, just real quickly. The bigger picture, we've had the discussion within ProStack about the need for additional playing surfaces for our youth sports teams. And right now, we don't have enough space for the growth of the teams, and we know they're going to increase in size. So that being said, that seems to be the most practical place to put a park or ball fields, because there's really no other space in town that we can do that. We determined down here at Town Center we wanted to put a big open space field there. It's not big enough to do that. In any other place in town, it's not accessible by the amount of kids that want to ride their bikes to practice and so forth. So I'm not saying that we need to take the commercial component out of there, or the office, or anything else, but I do agree with the suggestion of moving the community-oriented uses up to the top, saying that is our priority. That's what we would like to see, because that's what I would like to see. as the priority. Now, when the time comes, we're going to have this discussion, and we're going to debate it, and we're going to get the whole entire community involved, including the residents on Andrew Drive, and this may change, but I think as a priority point of view, I think that should be moved up to the top.
Okay, other board comments? I guess, so I'm not going to reiterate my points. The one thing that I know currently is that ProStack hasn't envisioned this as being part of their Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails recommendation. So I don't think that this is going to rise to the top. I mean, I know that we're talking about, we will be talking later tonight about a parcel that I think is probably going to rise to the top. If we want to buy all these things, this is going to be something the public is going to decide that they're going to be able to, they'll want to raise their taxes to acquire, because we don't have the financial wherewithal to do all of this.
I agree.
And I'm not sure how that would all play out. In terms of open space, it's never been identified as a high priority open space as far as I'm aware. Trustee Pennington?
I do believe this conversation we're at the tip of the iceberg. The majority of it is yet to be had, and I think that is preserved by saying commercial, office, or community-oriented uses. So I think that wording just preserves the future discussion.
And I think what...
Trustee Sorelli and then Trustee Williams.
Ditto. Just
Ditto.
as is, and if something's happening on that, we will have a lot of conversation, and everybody here, and then some, would be involved in that. But I like this as is.
Trustee Williams.
So speaking on that, I've been saying this like a broken record, that we need community input. And it seems like I'm the only one actually saying that out loud over and over and over and over, and yet nothing ever gets done, just one vote. So I would prefer that in a lot of these opportunity areas that we put in here, that we get community input from each area and the residents that live in that area. If we have to write it in here, I would prefer that, but I want some kind of mechanism where we can go out and do that.
Okay. So I think that I am the lone, maybe there's one other person, but the lone wolf here about what I think probably makes sense long-term, what I think the appropriate vision is, what I'd like to see built there, and that's not business office, and it's not necessarily a rec field, but I think we can move on, because I think we're leaving it as it is. So, okay. All right, that brings us...
So can I just jump
So
in
for
again?
that, for that area, so, I think that we'll always recommend community engagement for any development process, and it's part of our
That's a given.
plan. That's a given.
So can we
But in
write
terms
that
of-
into every opportunity area?
We can if you like.
I
but-
disagree with that. We have processes.
Yeah, so my disagreement with this is that, well, we certainly want to be concerned about what happens with the residents of the area. I think that we need to make sure that we take the global perspective, and so, from behind my house, but I'd like it always to be open space, fantastic. Should everything be open space? Fantastic. Does that make sense at a global perspective? I don't think so. I can tell you what if something's in your backyard, what you're going to want. So, well, I think it's important to get that engagement. I think, once again, we can't just be focused on the people in one particular area.
And can I...
Yes, Trustee Sorelli.
Can I
That's not true.
elaborate on what I was...
That's not true,
why I
Deb.
was saying no is, if we add to this comp plan that we are going to do a particular thing within each area as we go along, that is not it's redundant with our already existing processes that say any development has to have a hearing. People have to be notified, on, and the comp plan is just a vision document, and it's a redundant reference to the processes that we have to follow. That's
Joe, as a former planning commissioner, I think it's important for you to state the mandatory processes that, you know them because you were a planning commissioner, and I'd like you to state them. What are
We went
they?
through with the attorney in great
Yeah.
detail to make sure we didn't deviate.
But, well, for